Boy, joy.
Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for January 18th at around 6:01. And if we can please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. Okay, do we have any announcements or words of wisdom or thoughts from anybody tonight? Just hopefully that everybody's staying warm and safe in this crazy weather that we keep having difficulties with. Thanks to Highway for getting things opened up quickly with the weekend and letting us get through. So if nothing in particular, let us go right to presentations. We don't have any public hearings, so we have our representative from the Board of Health, Kate Swistek-Rooks, please.
Hi there.
Hello.
Caitlin Rooks, 189 College Highway. So last time I was here, we were discussing purchasing rapid test kits and establishing a distribution plan for those test kits. And I will mention that since our last meeting, there have been a few changes, both at the state and federal level. There was a change for rapid tests to be able to be reimbursed by private insurance, which is not all insurance plans. I'm not sure if that includes state insurance, but that reimbursement plan would include 8 tests per person per month. So for a family of 4, that would equate to 32 tests, which is great. Another change that went live today in a beta site was that all families can order COVID tests online at covidtest.gov for 4 per household. Irregardless of household size, for people who have a household of 5, that might be a little bit frustrating, but if you go to covidtest.gov, the test will be distributed by the United States Postal Service, and the website reports that they will be mailed by the end of this month, so we'll see how that goes. So the town purchased 700 test kits, which the Board of Health was very appreciative of. We proposed that 100 of those test kits could be utilized for town employees and would be distributed by the town hall. The goal of that would be to keep essential workers at work, and these tests could be used after exposures or to identify symptomatic people quickly. The CDC still does advise that people test after an exposure after 5 days, so this would help keep people at work. And if people are sick, then we could hopefully rapid test them and avoid exposures for other people. We had recommended that there was 200 test kits distributed for Norris School and 50 tests for Southampton students at Hampshire Regional or Smith Voc. However, since our last meeting, there was an additional allocation at the state to distribute tests to local schools, and the actual details of that test distribution plan are still a little bit vague, but there were questions of whether or not there would be modifications to other testing programs like Test and Stay and pooled testing within schools. And I still think it's important to ensure that the school has an adequate number of tests for a couple of reasons. If a student is identified as being symptomatic, they still have to go home, and parents are reporting that they're having trouble getting those kids tested so they can return to school. Regardless if it's COVID, if they have symptoms, they still need to test before being able to come back, and families are required to pursue that testing outside of the school testing programs. The other challenge that Stephanie Foss mentioned is that if children are exposed outside of school testing programs, such as in extracurricular activities, sports, families still need to get their children tested before they're able to return, especially if they're unvaccinated, right? So if an unvaccinated child is exposed, they're expected to quarantine for 5 days, and then they're able to test in order to be able to return to school. So even if the school is able to provide tests for these students, the timeline on that is still really vague. And I think before we consider redistributing those particular tests, that we make sure that the school has an adequate supply to keep kids in school. The idea was to distribute 50 tests to the elderly housing building in town because the building manager could potentially help with distribution. It's one of our other cohorted living environments in town for particularly vulnerable citizens. And we discussed the group homes in town likely have other testing options because they're receiving rapid tests through the state through separate programs, which would not include the elderly housing. We discussed 50 tests to be distributed in the community cupboard for people who might not be able to afford rapid testing, and this was one area where we thought if we did have extra tests, this might be an area of opportunity to provide more tests for people who are unable to afford them, and then to provide 100 tests to be distributed by the Council on Aging, who have reached out on numerous occasions to the Board of Health about access to rapid testing. And if we had gone with the initial plan, this would leave a remaining 146 tests to be used or distributed at the discretion of Town Hall. And of course, we could see how the next several weeks went and how the tests were being utilized from the people who are distributing them and kind of come up with the next step. I still think that it's worth maybe holding on to the test for the school, which would leave us about 50% of those tests, and then we could maybe talk to the school, see how if they've actually received allocations from the state, and then determine if those tests are needed in the school or if they could be potentially distributed elsewhere. And since it requires a lot more effort to distribute tests to the community, we thought it would be really challenging to choose those remaining 250 tests for individual homes in Southampton. So it may be worth looking towards distributing additional tests to the Council on Aging, who may benefit from additional tests, or the community cupboard. Any questions, thoughts?
Well, thanks. I think you've put a lot of thought into how this might actually happen here, as we were a little bit worried last time as to how this was actually going to happen, and just having him on a shelf somewhere at the library or the senior center was, about as creative as we were last time. So this definitely gets into a lot more detail, and just the rationale seems to be pretty good here. But any comments, anybody? Yeah, Rini?
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is really helpful. I think that what worries me just a little bit is about the general public distribution. I mean, I think that targeting a lot of the more vulnerable kind of populations, but all the kids in school have parents, and most of the people that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s are not included in this unless they live or access. So that would be the only concern I have. Hopefully, we're all going to be in a different place in another couple of weeks if people can just to get up to 8 of them, per month. But that was the only thought I had, was that I'm just worried about parents, because these kids are in the same household as the parents. So, maybe we can think about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you said too that the 8 per month, that's the insurance reimbursement. Right.
They still have to find, right, exactly. You still have to find those tests to be able to get them reimbursed.
And that's totally different than the new federal government proposal of get 4 in your household, right? That's
correct.
A completely different thing. So if you were buying them online from Amazon or CVS or Walmart or something, then that's where that would apply.
Yes.
Now you can get 4 tests or test kits from
tests.
Just 4 tests from the government. Okay, that you have to order. Okay, yeah, so there's a lot of moving pieces.
If I could, the other thing is that guidance that came out today that hit my selectman inbox is that if you're a municipal employee on the health insurance, they've got a whole way for you to go get the free test through their system, and how to order it online, and that, which kind of says, okay, well, the 50, was it 50?
No.
Of the X number being held for town employees, should those just be the town employees that don't have the health insurance through us? Because the ones that have it through us have another means to get it. Do we have an anticipated delivery date?
I did get an email, and they are getting swamped. So the original 7 to 10 days, they sent out a notice that it would be 14 to 21 days from the order. So 14 days will be this Thursday.
This Thursday, so if it happens, right, so if it
So
happens.
I would expect them hopefully the end of next week.
Right, which then, and you said as of now, we're 3 to 4 weeks out through this wave. So at that point, we'll be 2 to 3 weeks out. And if we place another order, we're possibly beyond the wave by the time that next order comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interestingly, when we met as the Board of Health, we said the only way to really fairly distribute to a town of 6,000 is to provide a certain number of tests per household, which is a similar model like the federal government was suggesting, right? We talked about all of the same things, right? Not being able to provide tests to everybody fairly is of course a challenge, and everybody's experiencing backlogs in ordering tests. In fact, I just received my order that I placed on January 8th, and it took 3 weeks to get in, so.
I almost wonder if we should be approaching this on a multi-pronged task. Should we be going out of our way to over-communicate the ones you can get from the federal government per address?
I did post that on the community forums and to the Norris School Group today, as soon as I saw it go live.
Okay, yeah. Francine, do you have a question? Sorry.
No, I think it's a good plan.
So what you got here, those 100 tests for the town employees is what you were recommending to be distributed by town hall, and then there was still going to be, if we followed this plan, an extra 146 out there for others that could be, might either beef up Norris if they can't get them or something else, right? So John, are you saying not to do the 100 town employees for this, or?
Well, no, I'm
do that
just
instead?
saying,
Okay.
you give,
But
whatever
also
we
reach out.
decide today,
Yeah.
tomorrow we'll have new information.
Exactly,
Without
that's,
that, we would change our opinion.
exactly, that's the challenge. I mean,
It almost might be worthwhile making up a one-pager
Mm-hmm.
of, here are all the ways you can get these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to do that.
yeah,
And then if we can figure out some way to mass circulate that.
yeah.
Is there any need to track how these are being, to whom these are being distributed?
I think honestly, you're going to run into more resource utilization if you're trying to micromanage the tracking, and I think you have to look at the purpose of why you're tracking it. I mean, it's still a relatively small number. I think if you were distributing it one kit per household, or a certain number of tests per household, it would be worth tracking. But I feel like if we're distributing such small numbers, that it might not provide us with enough information.
Yeah, well, and yeah, what do we do with the results if we track it? I mean,
I do think that there is value in, if we give them to key people that represent populations, that's a very different thing
Yes.
than just giving them all out, because I do think this is taxpayer money.
Yes.
This is Southampton money, and I think we have an obligation, not that we wouldn't want to just give it out widely, but since they're in such high demand, I think that if we give it to the person that oversees the cupboard, and, the person, Jerry, probably, as far as town employees, and the school nurses, but if we identify who that key person is, we can get some data back.
yeah,
I did speak with Stephanie before all this new information, and she said that she would be happy to provide active feedback about how many tests that they were using and the purpose that they were using them for, in case we were to try to order more tests
Yeah.
in the future, and I think that's what you're talking about.
all right. Well, unless we have any other discussion or disagreement with the plan as presented here, I'd like us to formally say, yeah, we like this idea, and let's vote.
So
Go ahead, John.
I just have one other question that is somewhat unrelated, but it's in the third to last paragraph in what was presented to us. So just under, it looks, I'll generalize it by saying additional possible COA guidance, that paragraph, where you talk about, you had a discussion about requiring the booster to go in, but you've held off on that section,
Correct.
right? So I'm not advocating one way or the other, but what was concerning to me there is if you did move forward with that, requiring the booster to be present in that room, would that potentially have an impact on elections? Because the COA room is one of our precincts, so if you have to have the booster to get in there, in essence, are you saying precinct 1 would have to maintain the booster in order to go vote in May?
So
And I just throw it as feedback.
And I can just fill you in on what we talked about regarding the booster requirement. So I touched base with Janet, and, briefly Jerry spoke to Joan, and we did not move forward with requiring the booster for a couple of different reasons. We thought now that we recommended, not required, we recommended that the Council on Aging just take a pause while case rates are so high in town to limit in-person activities within the Council on Aging. And instead of requiring the booster, which actually didn't go over very well in other towns. There was towns where the Board of Health recommended it and then the Select Board voted it down. So we just chose to not move forward with that at this point and see how things go over the next weeks. And we thought that it might limit we only have so many resources within the Council on Aging, and it would put a lot of strain on Joan to even just track that information.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. Okay, all right, so how about, let's have a formal acknowledgement of this plan. Can we do that? Can somebody make a motion?
I'd make a motion to accept this and understand that this is a fluid plan that is subject to change with little to no notice to the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
and empower the Board of Health to move forward as they've indicated here.
And I would strongly encourage that, obviously, they're going to come in, hopefully, before we meet again with an official meeting, that they be sent out to the places within 48 hours, if at all possible, unless it comes in on like a Friday when no one's here. I just, I'll help with that if that's needed, but I think that since everybody's waiting, there's no reason to sit on the,
Certainly.
Yeah, get them out there. Okay.
so that'd be a second.
Okay, that's a second with that clarification. All right, very good. All right, all right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, there we go, good.
Can I just add, so the second part of this, which actually somehow didn't make it to the agenda, was just a follow-up to our vaccine clinic.
Oh, yeah.
The first clinic went very well. We were able to vaccinate over 200 people. All of the appointments were booked. And in the middle of us booking the clinic, they changed some of the guidance to include 12-plus boosters. So a number of the attendees were Norris students and high school students that were able to get boosted sooner, which was excellent. They have since changed the guidance to include Moderna and Pfizer boosters after 5 months. So we do anticipate that there will be even more people that will be eligible for our proposed clinic date for January 29th. And we're hoping to be able to offer more boosters in addition to second pediatric doses for all of the students that were vaccinated at the first clinic. And it was very helpful to have police presence, and although EMS wasn't present on site, they were available, and janitorial staff made sure that the room was fogged afterwards. They helped set up the space. So I'd like to also request that, and I know, John, you did the math last time, that we would request no more than $600 for the second clinic on January 29th to happen at Norris School, which would provide a janitor, potentially have an EMS standby, and police presence.
I don't have it. I'll make the motion to authorize an additional $600 out of the Arpa funds allocated to the town for said purpose.
I'll second.
Caitlin, do you, it hasn't been posted yet on the 29th?
That's correct. They're in the process of putting together all the information, and Lauren will be looking for volunteers soon.
Okay, because I had put down to be, to help on the 24th at the Elks, but I can't do it, so I told him I'd do the 28th or 29th.
Awesome.
My preference would be the 29th. But I
Perfect.
just- So you expect that'll be posted soon?
Yes.
And what time of day do you think it'll be?
Probably in the morning, likely from 10 to 1, as long as we're able to get volunteers for that time.
And people would go online and register like they did last time?
Correct, and as soon as the Color website is posted where people can book appointments, I'll be happy to share that information online.
I do know, just from personal experience, my daughter was vaccinated, and it sent a link right after asking her to sign up for her second shot and the time and everything. So she's already scheduled for the 29th.
Yep, anyone who's a second dose,
Yeah, it
yep.
was just an
Okay, they haven't posted
anticipation.
the actual volunteer sign up yet.
Okay, I will follow up on that, but I know Jerry was trying to get in touch with Lauren today.
Okay.
It's okay, do you know out of the 200 people that were vaccinated, what the distribution was in terms of mostly Southampton people, mostly certain age group? You
It
know?
was mostly Southampton people, and we had several several remarks about how great it was to be able to have it concentrated in Southampton. Some people lived very close by. And Leah, who has children in Norris, saw many children that are, classmates at the clinic too, which is really excellent.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, it was awesome. My daughter got
Yeah.
vaccinated by Leah, and that made it a lot easier.
That's awesome.
For kids getting shots.
All right,
I
so-
just have one question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it possible for families to go and get their shots together? Because I know they were doing kids in the morning, and then parents had to come back in the afternoon to get their boosters.
Yes.
Is there a way that they could schedule it so the parents and the child could get it simultaneously?
We did ask, so Northampton really sets up the structure for how they allow the clinics to happen, and because there's different doses for the pediatric doses and the adult doses, they did not permit, they actually said that most of the clinics that they do is kind of one or the other or different times because of the risk of providing the incorrect vaccine, so they do that for vaccine safety purposes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
That makes a
Makes
lot of
sense.
sense.
It's, even with the
Really,
Moderna
really
being two
strict.
different doses, it was a lot to coordinate.
All right. So we have a motion on the table to allocate another $600 from the Arpa funds to support the second vaccine clinic on January 29th. Do we have a second for that?
Yeah, Joy.
Joy seconded?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Very good. And just one last question. Shall we think about ordering another set of kits, or is that?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to do it here or wait for the Arpa
Yeah.
piece later in the agenda, but yes.
Okay, well-
One place or the other, we should have a discussion about whether
Okay.
we are going to consider or to order some more of
Yeah.
those test
I
kits.
mean, it's hard to know what the timing is to, if it's going to take a 3 to 4 week lead time to order them again, it's,
It's a nightmare.
yeah.
And
definitely.
plus, when all these other tests come in,
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, and I see so many clinics everywhere, and I'm part of them, that I thought, boy, I'm surprised that, we should have one in Southampton, but people want to get it from their own community. So
Yeah.
even though I think they're going to be everywhere, and, they're not, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to consider ordering more of the test
oh,
kits.
great.
Yeah,
Should we
well,
do the same?
we did, last time we put out, what was it, $15,000 is what we did, and that got us,
We did, which came to basically 3 cases of 232,
yeah, so,
2 packs, which comes to 13,000 and some change.
13,000.
Well, I think we should just repeat it, and then without going, spending too much. If it is going to be like all over the place, you can get it, so many per household, at least that'll give us another 700.
Right,
700 kits, right?
696 2-packs,
Right.
correct.
Packs. All right,
So I'll make a motion to authorize the same amount of money, 13,700 or something?
Yeah,
Who's
just in
up to
case
50?
there's
Up to
any
50, in
weird
case-
thing, just say 14,000 and we're fine.
14,000 to purchase.
in case prices change, let's not cut ourselves short here, because if you're $5 over, you'll not order another case. So let's just do the same amount that we did last time, which was up to 15,000 for the kits,
15,000.
and we had allocated, I think, 2,000 for shipping, but this particular vendor, you didn't have to pay shipping charges, right?
Correct.
But who knows if we can get the same vendor, so there may still be shipping charges.
The tests that I just received today were purchased through iHealth, and they have a free shipping deal for enterprise purchases, and the tests cost $7 each, which is actually a pretty competitive price in comparison to what is listed on the state website. And the iHealth tests are listed as $5, but then you have to pay all these crazy shipping charges, so it's easier just to go on their website and get them for $7 each.
We did the Blue Health the first time around.
Yeah, okay, so whatever, yeah, so let's just say the same amount that we'd allocated the last time?
Number, yeah.
Okay, same dollar amount that we allocated last time, all right. Could I have a second for that?
I'll second it.
All right. Everybody clear on the motion? Yeah? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Hi.
Aye.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
And before you go, though, I just want to thank you and the Board of Health for being so proactive in this instance.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the support. I think it'll go a long way.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kate.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Thank you, Kate.
it. Okay, all right, next, we have open time for the public. Do we have anybody who would like to address the select board with any issues? Thanks, Kate, bye.
Right.
Nope. Do you?
Oh, no, I just came to see you guys.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't want to ignore you, so welcome.
I think Nancy's given it a test run for the February 1st meeting. Where
Oh, okay,
where
well, that's fine, that's
the Hampton
perfect.
Pond Association will be on for a request.
Okay, good.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. So with that, let's keep on moving. Quarterly reports. We have the town clerk and election registration report and the bylaw review committee. And Lucy had sent a note saying that she couldn't stay tonight to do this, but she has given us a couple pages of a report, so.
I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, okay, Ed, why don't you go ahead then and read that out? I think
All right.
she put the work into it, so let's please share that report.
Sure. Town Clerk's Office Report and Board of Registers, Town Clerk. Current priorities, working to get the census forms out to all households. The census is required to have accurate data in our state system for our voting lists. January, processing dog licensing and integrating the new pay online system for dog licensing. We have gone live through our online payment system that is already in place through Unibank. January continuing early. Training on new voting machines to get ready for a May election. Machines have been ordered and should be here early spring. We will have training sometime in April. Verifying signatures on nomination papers of those interested in running for seats that will be vacant in May for town officials. February, getting ready for annual caucus in April. Continue to get all committee and board members up to date on conflict of interest training, and would like to have KP Law come out and do open meeting law training for any new members. Continue working with the Bylaw Advisory Committee on the roll out of the E-Code 360 General Coding Program. This will be ongoing for the 1 to 2 years. And just to let you know, Lucy let me know that she'll need an agenda item on the next meeting because the Select Board actually has to vote to retire the old voting machines and accept the new voting machines for,
Okay.
as part of the process. So,
Okay, good to know.
budget spending, the town clerk's office has 2 employees, myself, meaning Lucy, and the assistant town clerk. We also have election workers that are paid out of our election wage line on the budget. The minimum wage will be increasing to $14.25. The election workers are still being paid under the wage from 2020. I did not do an increase in 2021 for the fact that it was going to be increased in January of 2022. We will have one election in fiscal year 22, which is the local one in May. We will be having 3 elections in fiscal year 23. I have submitted the PCFs to the PPB for approval of the increase. I have asked for an increase of 2% for the assistant town clerk because they received 4% in fiscal year 22. I have asked for an increase for myself for fiscal year 23 because I was only giving a 2% increase for fiscal year 22. I am one of the 2 lowest paid department heads in this town. The office equipment in the town clerk's offices is finally getting updated. I would like to ask that our registration and expenses lines not be decreased in fiscal year 23. We are growing in population, and with that comes more work and more supplies, and we'll be using this line to help pay for the maintenance fees for machines as needed. But since they are new, they will hopefully not need maintenance. It will also be used for ordering ballots, as well as the maintenance cost of the E-Code 360 program that we are working on, so residents will be able to find out general and zoning bylaws in a clearly organized way. This has been 2 years in the making as well. Personnel staffing, I have been using a volunteer in our office as to offset costs of adding more hours to the assistant. The volunteer has been very helpful, and we'll ask her services again. Plans for the next 4 to 6 months. Get ready for spring, fall elections and continuing our daily duties. We would like to eventually be able to have residents be able to pay for certified copies of birth, marriage, and death certificates online. We are starting with the dog licenses first to see how that will go. We will continue to attend town clerk conferences, and I'm hoping to take the test in July to become certified. The conferences are very helpful because of the ever-changing laws in Massachusetts. We are hoping to to get the past few years of town reports and street listings bound in regular bound books, which the past town clerks have done. Fall elections are to be held on September 9th, 2022, state primary, subject to change. November 11th, 2022, general election.
I believe that's November 8th, right? She's got, is it?
Yeah, November 8th, 2022, general
Yeah, and
election.
9/20 on the state primary, yep.
The link to the dog license pay online is or should be up on the town website on the town clerk's page as of January 18th, which is today, and it is. It's under the town clerk's page, and then there's a dog licensing tab, and it is there in the upper right-hand corner.
Great.
Long-term issues for select board consideration planning. Communicating to the residents of the town when there is important information to be shared would be helpful. There appears to be not enough communication put out there through media outlets regarding when something is happening in the town. Some residents do not have a computer at home, so they don't watch the meetings, hence they miss out on information. We believe that the select board should be communicating through the town's website, the Facebook pages, and the Gazette, or the Reminder as avenues to get information to the townspeople. Suggested tools, resources to help do your job more efficiently or cost-effectively. Our office is starting to become more efficient. We are trying to save money by having our records up to date. We will not be ordering any new equipment in the near future. We would like it if we could have my printer's fax machine work. Either the town hall could actually have an IT person or be able to ask the custodian if he would be able to fix various office equipment without having to ask permission. We are also trying to use any free resources we can that become available from the state. Board of Registrars. The Board of Registrars has been meeting on a monthly basis. The last few meetings we have discussed a presentation at Hampshire Regional High School and the civics classes regarding voter registration with elections. It has been quite interesting how some students do not know about local, state, or federal government, but there are also those who are aware of how the process works. We are going to be doing another presentation as soon as we feel comfortable going back into the school safely during COVID. We are also planning on having a big voter registration day at the school in April. The Board of Registrars were busy this fall certifying signatures for questions that will be going on the state ballot for this fall. Over 80,000 signatures from all over the state had to be received for the questions to be approved to be put on. We'll be getting ready to certify nomination papers for candidates for our upcoming election in May. We will be having training with the new machine this spring, and the Board of Registrars will be attending so they are aware of how the machines work. We will also be having election workers attend.
Great, thanks, Ed, and thanks, Lucy. Yeah, no, I think this is pretty detailed report. Certainly gives us some things, some clarity in terms of what's going on. I like the idea that we're starting to get a few more things online in terms of payments online, so we'll see how the dog licenses go, as she said. I also really appreciate the Board of Registrars getting involved and going over to the high school and doing a little bit of civic education, and that sounds great. I would assume then it looked like she had put in, from what I'm understanding, she's already put in the PCFs to the PQB committee to take a look at for the minimum wage increase, I assume.
She has.
Okay.
And so has the library.
Okay, so hopefully we'll see those at our next meeting once they've gone through PQB.
But if I'm reading this right, did they not get the bump, or were they not in the category to get the bump when we increased everything to $13.50?
You would be correct.
Sounds that way. We had them on the schedule, I know, to make them to put them on the payroll. We definitely did
Right.
that part. I
Right.
guess I thought we had gone to the 13.25, but we
Well, there
did.
were questions that I had asked, and Lucy came back and addressed all of them.
That's right,
In terms
okay.
of why some people weren't on the street list, and why is one person
Yeah.
election warden, other ones election workers. And John, if you could just be aware of that was one of the distinctions, is that there's supposed to be parity between wardens and workers. Yeah, so I kept waiting for the PCF to come back.
Okay.
So that they would be able to get paid the step,
Yeah,
because they are the lowest paid people in town.
Right,
But
they are.
apparently what she's saying is that they'll skip that jump and go up to 425 for the next election.
Yeah,
that's what this says.
yep, okay.
Okay,
All
I
right,
wanted to be
well,
sure. And then the other question I had, I know that she was applying or asking for funding from the state to pay for the second voting machine. Do we have any word on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Good, all right.
Is there an issue as far as, we have a new tech committee and all that, and she made a comment about, I don't know that a custodian's job is to fix technology,
It
but
it would not be.
is there a mechanism for reporting the need for repairs or anything?
Yeah, all I would have to do is notify me.
Okay.
I would, however, as you bring that up, I would like to formally institute the single point ticket method for IT issues, which I understand may have been used probably 5 years or so ago here. So I think it would be helpful. So
Yeah.
keep that in the back of your minds, please.
Yeah, I think it would be to have one central point to call and be sure that they're taken care of and crossed
Yeah.
off and done with, rather than everybody going to various sources. And just one thing to focus on Lucy's comment here about getting the word out and communication. I think the communication has been key for all of us to try and get the word out however we can. Both the Gazette and the Reminder seem to be very interested in Southampton news. They are more than willing. They're reaching out for articles, so I don't think there's really a big problem there. We just have to, let them know who to talk to on whatever issue. And in fact, the Reminder, all of a sudden I look up and the Reminder's put something in. They're obviously either listening or following our meetings. And then the Gazette, they've asked for a couple of interviews. So I think we're getting better at getting the word out, but definitely not everybody has the computer access. So however we can make that more viable, that's a great idea. Okay? All right, next, Francine, Bylaw Review Advisory Committee, please.
Okay. The responsibility of the Bylaw Review Advisory Committee is to review existing bylaws with the objective of updating them when needed and to draft new bylaws to address current and necessary state and local matters. One of the major objectives of the committee is to make certain that the language of the bylaws is simplified for easier use and access by town residents. This committee of volunteers has, since 2017, had several rotations of its membership and currently consists of 3 of the 5 required members. They are Virginia Ahart, Christine Fowles, and myself as chair. I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to invite 2 more town residents to join in this important, albeit long-term effort. The committee meets once or twice a month in person or on Zoom, and meetings are scheduled to accommodate everyone's availability. As far as the process goes, the committee revises existing or drafts new bylaws in collaboration with relevant departments, committees, and boards, and never in isolation. In some instances, drafts have been posted on the town website for comment, and a public meeting held to gather feedback from residents regarding particular bylaws. The results of those information gathering efforts are incorporated, when appropriate, into the final draft. Once consensus has been reached on the draft, it's brought forward to the Select Board for review and often revision. The next step in the process requires a review by the town legal counsel before the bylaw drafts are presented to voters at an annual or a special town meeting. If the voters approve the proposed bylaw warrant article, the town clerk then sends the approved version to the state's attorney general for office for approval, which could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months for response. Only when the AG's office approves the bylaw does that bylaw go into effect. As far as our progress goes, according to our records from 2017 to date, and this, I believe, is an unduplicated count, there have been 16 revised or new bylaws approved by the town and ultimately by the Attorney General. There are 18 bylaw drafts in process, meaning they are in the final stages of development or are currently being reviewed by departments, committees, and boards. There are 4 bylaws on tonight's agenda for the Select Board to review and recommend. There are 3 still awaiting review by our legal counsel, and 6 are on the list to yet be drafted. We did hold a public meeting in September to gather feedback on several proposed bylaws, and we think that mechanism really works to gather input from residents, and we'll be holding another one that will be announced probably in early February. That'll come out. As far as budget goes, because we're a committee of volunteers, we don't affect the budget in terms of staffing. However, there are budget implications because of the fees associated with the legal review, of each of these documents, and those costs vary based on the complexity of the bylaw and the corresponding state regulation that applies. I estimate those costs to be several $1,000s per year. We can manage it, which I think Ed has done, only doing as many each time as our budget can support. And that extends the process a bit as well. The town clerk's report already, well, I didn't go into detail enough on the cost and the maintenance and description of the bylaw codification system. At the annual town meeting, the town approved the purchase of an E-code codification or organizational system for our bylaws. That has been purchased, and there is an annual fee associated with that going forward of $1,195 a year. So that's another budget implication for, partially for the bylaw committee. Over the course of the next 6 months, the Bylaw Committee will focus its efforts on finalizing its drafts on dogs and dog kennels, non-criminal ticketing, this other item a lot of people have been asking about, dumping materials on public ways, and criminal and committee board membership and participation. To gather additional input, we plan to post the dog and dog kennel drafts on the town website and hold a public meeting when the COVID surge has subsided. As far as efficiency, it's our expectation that the newly acquired bylaw codification system, the E360, which is used by many towns and cities across the state, will simplify the ways in which town residents can access the town bylaws. And that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Francie. Good. And just to clarify, the 3 that are still awaiting legal review, Ed, I believe are just 3 that we had recommended for deletion. There are no...
Correct.
There are old ones that are just...
Yeah, and Michelle sent me back some comments on those, so I'll send them along to you.
Okay, all right, very good. But otherwise, that's where we are. Okay, any questions for Francine? Anybody?
Francine, I'm still having a little bit of difficulty conceptualizing this coding system. And so I'm just kind of, I mean, I think it was the budget item or what was approved town meeting, I think was like $5,000 or $6,000.
Yes, it was
And then the annual fee is going to be $1,095. So
$1,195.
$1,195. Okay, is this going to be a set of bylaws that the fee here updates according to Mass General Law? Or is this, does this give us a set of bylaws that are more standardized, or is it just organize the ones that we have in some accessible way?
It organizes what we do and presents it in a format that makes it very user-friendly. If I could just, if you want to take a look at look at the, Dartmouth, Hadley, I mean, there are lots and lots of towns that already use the system. So it does index it in a way that, as I said, makes it user-friendly, based on how we want to present it. But they review it, they make sure that it's compliant. I mean, our attorneys do that as well, but they make sure that it's, meets the standards of the regulations that the state passes. And as they change, I think we will get some notifications. They won't do the work for us, we do the work, but they make certain that we're up to date. And this really is, believe it or not, we're just at the beginning of a 2-year process. That's how long it takes to get this whole thing up and running.
So.
And they're very searchable is one of the
Yeah.
hugest differences
Okay.
to them.
Yeah.
Rather than having to read through them all, you can
Yeah.
type in some keywords and they might
Yeah.
take you to 2 or 3 places.
So when we have the annual fee, it's going to be, they're going to send us, or send the committee information if there's a change in Mass General laws that might affect our bylaws?
I think that we'll get notifications of changes. It's still our
We have to
responsibility.
apply them to whatever
Yes.
bylaw, or- yeah, okay.
Yeah, they don't write them for us.
And we'll still have to have our attorney review them all,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I was hoping we could save a little bit in legal fees,
Right.
but I'm not sure that we can. But nonetheless, it's a very straightforward, clear, logical system that I think more town residents, that will be a place where they go to get information that they need.
Yeah.
That may cut down on lots of calls coming in. And then there's a consistency of the information that's being given out, because it's published and it's public.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, nothing else? We will move on. Thank you. Appointments and resignations. We have a resignation and an appointment, I believe. Resignation, I'll go ahead and read. This is from Mike Jagger, who has been the chair of the Ad Hoc Tech Committee. Unfortunately, he's got some family issues with parents and ill health, and he's going to be traveling back and forth out of state, so he's submitted his resignation and hopes that maybe sometime he might be able to come back, but right now he is submitting his resignation from the Ad Hoc Tech Committee, and Dan LaValle is actually picking up again as the chair. So if we could accept, let's do these separately. Could we have the approval for the resignation of Mike Jagger?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
I guess,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you, Mike.
stepping up and doing that. Mike was really one of the early members of the committee, so we appreciate his working with us on this challenging IT situation. And next, we have an appointment of Kathleen Haley to the Concom. Kate, I'm sorry. Hello, Joy, would you like to take on that one?
Sure, yes. Kathleen Haley, she put in her application and her resume. The Southampton Concom voted to approve her as a member. She has experience, she has a BS from UMass in natural resource conservation and a master's in education. She was a middle school science teacher and in the past had been an environmental analyst, and now she is a mom in Southampton who's interested in just getting involved with the community and joining the Conservation Commission. So the Concom was very excited to have her apply. So I will be putting forth a motion to approve Kathleen Haley to the Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2023.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right. Any questions, discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Glad that they found someone who's got some great background that will be a help, I'm sure, to the committee, to the commission.
Absolutely.
Very good. Okay, let's go on to reports. Town Administrator Report. Ed, would you like to please go ahead first?
Excuse me. Sure. Just to let you know, we have received our second set of revenues, which are from the local sales tax for the adult cannabis retail sales from Dreamers. The second set of revenues is from the second quarter of fiscal year '22 and amounted to a little over $14,000. And to let you know, the Massachusetts Municipal Association Annual Business Meeting and Trade Show has been changed from an in-person event this upcoming weekend to a virtual event via Zoom due to COVID-19 restrictions, and there's no cost to doing it via Zoom. So if any of the select board members want to attend, like the opening meeting or the select board business meeting or anything else, you are welcome to do that at no cost to the town.
Great.
Just to let you know, going on, Lisa Kelly from Eric Kincher, CPA, continues to work with Bradley Oxon, Ellen Kruzak, Jennifer Day, and myself on the adjustments and closing to the fiscal year 2021 financial books. And Kate got into this a little bit also, but the Board of Health has made some recommendations to the Council on Aging to be able to suspend all in-person activities at the Council on Aging into February due to the rise in COVID-19 positive cases and for the safety of senior citizens. And then Novus, who is one of the cybersecurity vendors, will be making a site visit to the town hall on Thursday at noon as a follow-up to our cybersecurity improvement grant, which we received through the Massachusetts Compact IT grant program. And then upcoming select board meetings for February are on the 1st and the 15th.
Okay. Any questions of Ed?
Do you know if we have a meeting next Tuesday?
You got to get
Yes,
closer
we-
to the mic, or mic.
I just want to have a meeting next Tuesday.
Yes, we will need a meeting for executive session next Tuesday.
Okay, all right. And just, Ed, one thing, we talked about it, I know last time a little bit, just while we're on the whole issue of cybersecurity and IT improvements, et cetera, just give us a reminder on the VoIP timeframe on that again? The VoIP timeframe in terms of maybe moving forward with that?
You mean the VoIP update, which is later on in the agenda?
Is it on the agenda? I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I can do it here, too.
I didn't notice,
But, yeah,
I didn't notice it on the agenda, that's why I said that,
well,
sorry.
then maybe I missed it.
Maybe
so.
it fell off.
It could
So,
be.
yeah, if you
It
would,
could have been
please.
one of those ones we talked about. So, yes, Dave Rooks and myself touched base on Saturday on that and put the final numbers together. And he sent them off to the vendor, so we'll wait to hear back from them. One thing I would like to bring back to the select board on that, from the latest Arpa fund update on what is allowances are allowed to be expended under Arpa funds. I believe that actually the purchase of the telephones in this particular case would qualify under an IT expenditure, and I also believe in the future that a web update would fall into an acceptable category under the ARPA funds. So my question to the select board, and John's probably as familiar with that latest ARPA bulletin which we received as I am. If that's the case, would the select board like to go forward with the original plan of leasing the telephones and then have them drop off the lease in about 3 years, or to purchase the telephones outright through the ARPA funds? So we're not carrying those on a lease.
I don't recall the actual difference in costing, do you, offhand? Yay.
I don't, to be honest with
Don't
you.
remember.
It's just the fact that, you know, going forward, we wouldn't have to separate them
Yeah,
out from the lease of the equipment versus the actual service, and we wouldn't be paying actually through the lease any finance charge on the telephone, so
right.
there would be a little bit of savings there.
And I'm sure the vendor's going to need to know that before we meet next time. Well, what would be your recommendation?
No, my recommendation would be to purchase the phones outright
Yeah.
and
I
save
think we
a
were
little bit of money.
I think we were probably trying to do it at the tech meeting level, not knowing whether we could have any funds to do this, and trying to make it a reasonable
Right.
cost by stretching it out by leasing. Anybody have any thoughts, or do you want a specific dollar figure, or?
I would just go for thoughts
Yeah.
on it.
Well, the information would have been in the presentation that David Rooks gave us, probably about, I don't know, 3 meetings ago, whenever we had that VoIP presentation on the 4th, I think, of January, so we could take a look at that, but I don't know. Are we, anybody have any thoughts about leasing versus purchasing the phones outright?
Well, I mean, generally, it's the phones, right? So if something goes, I guess without knowing, the questions that come to my mind is, okay, we own them now instead of leasing. If we go in that direction, there's got to be a warranty. which probably matches the term of the lease of 3 years, so that's neutral. And then, I can't think of anything else related to phones that would be a problem. So it might be as simple as us rescinding our vote authorizing the lease over multiple fiscal years and empowering the town administrator to purchase them, provided that it was a net savings. So he could do his own analysis.
And then we would still lease the service itself, so.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember, what was the kind of lifespan of the equipment? Because the value in leasing is, the lease is up, you get new equipment. Is this what was the
Well,
lifespan?
basically, the lease changed at the end of 3 years because the phone equipment dropped off it. The lease on the service continues.
Yeah, we would have paid, on the lease, we would have paid off the phones by the end of 3 years.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
all right, so.
And I'd say you can probably get at least 5 years out of the phones.
How many?
Yeah, I would hope a little longer than that.
Okay.
but,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Okay. All right, so that motion is to basically rescind our earlier vote to lease the phone sets, authorize the town administrator to do his own analysis in terms of the cost savings of this, and empower
And
him
if there was
to
a savings purchase, move forward with purchase.
move forward with purchase.
Separate them out and purchase the phones.
As
My
ARPA
ARPA funds.
ARPA funds as a
Yep.
funding source.
Purchasing them outright with ARPA funds. Okay. All right, I think that's the motion on the table. Could we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. I
And
think
that
that
would
will be a little,
go, in the web update, we would wait for costs on that anyway. We don't have a cost estimate on the web update yet,
no.
but we know that that's something that looks like it can be covered with ARPA.
It does. I mean, the ballpark on that, depending on the company that we end up using, is probably between $10,000 and $12,000.
Okay. Good. And I think the tech committee was planning on inviting one of the vendors to the tech committee
Yes.
to talk about that. There's a couple of vendors that seem to be doing a lot of the web updates and web maintenance kind of things in the area. So we'll have more information on that probably the next meeting. Okay, how about some select board reports? John, I'll start with you up there. Anything?
Since our last meeting, PPP met, no, correction, we will be meeting this Thursday to take up the ongoing sick use language for consideration that ultimately will come before the select board after a public hearing, as well as we anticipate having adjusted language on vacation and clarification language on short-term disability to more clarify that, to be in line with the other benefits. And finance nor capital have met since our last meeting.
Okay. And that's one thing, both finance, especially finance, but finance and capital, well, we would like to encourage them to schedule some meetings because of the budgets. Submission should be, we'll talk about that later, but the budget submission should be pretty much in-house, and they need to be starting to be looked at, I assume, pretty soon by the Finance Committee at least, okay? All right, good.
Can I just ask you, was the PRF for the Council on Aging on the agenda for Thursday?
With the new position? Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Francine, anything?
Okay, Norris School, the committee met via Zoom on January 12th. The principal reported that there are 476 students enrolled, with 43 as school choice from out of district. The DESE guidelines regarding masks are in effect until February 18th, at which time the 80% off ramp, meaning if 80% of the staff and students are vaccinated, the committee can make its own decision whether or not to continue the mask requirement. The chairs of the 5 town committees, school committees, are in communication in an attempt to be consistent in setting or revising the mask policy across all the elementary schools and Hampshire Regional. To date, approximately 45% of Norris students are vaccinated, with a little more than 95% of staff being vaccinated. The 5-town regional agreement has been under discussion with a final review scheduled for January 25th. This consideration to regionalize the entire school system in Southampton would go from pre-K to high school. It's expected that there will be an almost 6% inflation rate for Chapter 70 funds in fiscal year '23, which is good news. There was much discussion to address teacher morale and workload during this pandemic, which I think, understanding what their days are like, it's been a very difficult challenge for them, and appreciate all their efforts. So being consistent with the policy that the Hampshire Regional High School Committee adopted, as well as a couple of the other elementary schools in the district, Norris teachers will have 2 additional half-days without students, which means that they can do their work in their classroom alone, because their workload has increased over this period of time. Or I believe I also heard that they could do their work from home if that was feasible. The dates will be announced. A preliminary fiscal year '23 budget will be presented at the February school committee meeting, with a final vote expected at the March meeting. The cost of vocational education at this point in our budget is over by $94,000, but that may change in the third quarter, so that's, wait to hear more from the business manager on that at the next meeting. Data was presented regarding the Norris MCAS performance, which can be obtained by people who are interested by watching the recording on the meeting. There was a lot of data presented, so that wasn't something that would be appropriate for me to report on, and it's a little overwhelming. A report was shared showing that the average elementary per pupil cost across the state of Massachusetts is $16,000 per student. Norris costs are estimated to be $12,200 per student, about $3,800 less than the state average. Parent-teacher conferences are scheduled for late March, and I believe that I understood that they could be virtual or in person. And again, more information will follow. The parent-teacher organization is planning an outdoor spring bazaar to raise funds, and the date for that is slated for May 14th. And then finally, a virtual Hampshire Regional fiscal year '23 preliminary budget meeting will be held via Zoom on February 7th. The next scheduled meeting of the Norris School Committee is February 9th. And then a couple of other little notes here. The shared regional human resource project managed by the PVPC will be meeting tomorrow. That's the first time in a couple of months, so I hope we have some more to present at the next meeting about where we are in this process. This desperately needed resource for our town. And then the Board of Health will meet again on January 27th at 5 o'clock.
Great.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions? I just had one. You had mentioned the number of kids at Norris that were vaccinated. Did I hear 45%? Is that what I heard?
44.6%.
Really? Okay. And we have posted a meeting for February 7th, I believe it is, with the Hampshire Regional Budget Review, so that if any of us would like to attend that, we can do that without, without risking a quorum issue, okay? So that's open for everybody if you have time to attend part of it at least. All right, Rini, go ahead.
Community Preservation meets tomorrow at 5:30. They haven't met prior to that. Public Safety has not met. Board of Assessors just met at 4 o'clock today. They're doing a lot of the work of the office, dealing with chapter lands and abatements, and they are still in the process of recruiting a permanent principal assessor. Nothing to report there. And I did talk to them a little bit about maybe making a recommendation to the Cost Efficiency Committee around both assessments, both personal property as well as property, because I think they all agree that there are companies that can bring us up to where we are growth-wise, and they usually pay for themselves, and that'll be something that would benefit us. So I think Bradley is the representative of the finance team that's going to be there, but if you could just keep that on the agenda. I did ask them for them to make maybe a recommendation to the committee, but that would be a good place to look.
Yeah, okay.
And then Council on Aging met on January 5th, as Kate mentioned, and also Ed mentioned, all in, person programs are suspended until the 14th of February, but there are other programs that are going on virtually. And the Walking Club, of course, is continuing. As I mentioned, the PRF for the program coordinator is going to be at PQB on Thursday. The interim admin assistant is up and working and helping out a lot. And then there is a informal building. As you know, we got the donation in the will of one of our residents, and so there's a group that are looking into what that amount will end up being, and have been touring a couple of senior centers. A couple of us are going over to South Hadley next week to visit their new senior center, just to get some ideas, and then we'll be putting together a formal senior center building committee in the next month or so.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, enjoy.
Sure, so Open Space Committee met,
Let's speak up a little louder, Joe, with your
Sorry.
double mask there, sorry.
I know. Open Space met on January 13th. They discussed a property residents are going to be donating, or not donating, putting under a conservation restriction with Kestrel, and it's on Pomeroy Meadow. They're going to be seeking a water grant with the water department, because I believe it is in an area where the Barnes Aquifer is. So that's in the process, with Kestrel kind of coordinating it all. And there was discussion regarding a ceremony for the Hendrick donation conservation restriction land, and having some kind of celebration, ribbon cutting, a ceremony when in the spring, when hopefully COVID is less active and people can enjoy actually being outside. There was a lively discussion. Housing Authority was invited to speak with Open Space in regards to future collaborations. This came about with the previous first right of refusal, where a property came across everyone's table, and there was a lot of talk between how they could both collaborate on that, and a Housing Authority just wanted to keep any future potential collaborations in the back of Open Space Committee's mind, just because they really are in the need of housing here in Southampton. So that was a good discussion. Their next meeting, I believe, is February 10th at 6 p.m. Planning Board met. They went over their bylaws. They are meeting again January 19th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Concom is meeting February 7th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Housing Authority is meeting February 7th at 6 p.m. also via Zoom. We did apply for the MAHT Housing Production Plan grant that I discussed at the last meeting. That application went out, and we also got letters of support from our former representative, Lindsay Sabadosa, and our current representative, Kelly Pease. They both made a joint letter of support for us, which went along with the application.
Great, great. At some point, if you guys wouldn't mind just forwarding that application maybe
Absolutely.
over to the grant committee, at least?
Absolutely, I
Yeah,
will
or
forward
anybody
both
who would
letter
like it,
and
but yeah,
application.
just so we're trying to keep track of some of these. When people are, various departments are doing their own grant applications, that's great. Okay, anything else?
Nope, that's all.
All right, I'm going to give you one new one. So we had our first meeting of the Ad Hoc Cost Efficiencies Committee last week, and we had a good group where a couple people couldn't make it, and we're still missing a couple of couple of persons that we would like to invite from the public to join us. So again, anybody with some financial background and human resource background, business background, people that, you think that, you don't have anything to offer. You'd be surprised what you do have to offer. Anybody who's worked and managed a business and has had to deal with payroll, has to deal with human resource issues, you can have some valuable perspective to help out the committee. So we had our first meeting, and I think it went quite well. Did a bit of a brainstorming session with looking at all the various town services that we do provide, talked about some of the services that we would like that we can't afford to provide, and then talked about some of the ones that are maybe ones that we want to take a look at as a priority. So we've decided that even though that this was going to be a monthly meeting, that to get us up and running, and given that the budget season is upon us, and we would hope to be able to have some input relative to what's happening with budget decisions, we're actually having another meeting on the 27th of this month at 3:30 in the afternoon via Zoom, and we're going to take a look at what people were going to be identifying as kind of the low-hanging fruit. Which are the ones that we think we can sort of tackle fairly quickly, easily, without too much grief and monetary costs, but we can actually analyze and see if it makes sense. Is it a time saver? Does it get more cost efficiency? Does it save some costs, et cetera? So we're going to be looking at that on the meeting on the 27th. So feel free to tune in, feel free to join and join the committee. You need to just go to the town website and fill out the volunteer form and add maybe an email or your CV or a letter with it, just to give us a little bit more detail. One of the things I think I would like to do at some point is to expand, Ed and I were talking about this, is expand that volunteer form on the website. It's really kind of limited, and I noticed lately people are actually attaching their resumes, their CVs to their application, which is great, because that does give us a whole lot more detail. So maybe we can figure out a way to make that a more usable form, but that's that's an aside. So anyway, the cost efficiencies committee is up and running. And just for the Ad Hoc Grant Committee, we're actually meeting Thursday, still working on the Greenway proposal for mass trails on the design portion of the Greenway. And a couple of members of the Greenway Committee have been incredibly instrumental in helping do a large part of the drafting of that. And so that's moving forward. It's got to be submitted on February 1, so we'll be meeting that deadline. So we've got some work to do to meet the deadline. And then also working with Chief Workman on the update for the hazard mitigation plan, that grant application we hope to get in by the end of the month. And then lastly, the people may have seen it across your emails, the DLTA grant is open again. This is the one from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. This is the one that Francine mentioned, is through the shared human resource one. We had it for the Historical Commission, I believe, on the canal, and we had it to help us with the master plan survey. So we've used it 2 or 3 times at least, but it's open again, and it just opened since our last meeting, and it closes already on the 24th. So it's...
I thought we're only eligible every other year.
Don't think so, no.
What's that?
I don't think it's every
Aren't we
other.
only eligible every other year?
That's the community compact.
That's a compact,
Yeah.
That's
okay.
community compact, that's not this
Okay.
one. So this is open, but it's, so my original thought, Joy, was housing and housing production plan, or developing the housing trust, because that's something
Yeah.
that Southampton, or the select board, right, has to take a
Yes.
large role in somehow. So I guess I would just want to be clear what this new grant is. I mean, if there's still something needed, it would have to be written up, and it's just it's a letter, really. It's not a heavy-duty application. It's a couple pages of a letter to PVPC if there was something, that made any sense for housing folks at all. So
I think we did discuss it, I just didn't, I didn't know that it was I was waiting
Yeah.
for the deadline, so
yeah, no, it's
January 24th?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay, all right.
ridiculously short. I mean, they don't leave it open for more than 2 weeks, is my understanding, for whatever reason. Okay, so that's all we have for committee reports. Thank you, everybody, for doing all your liaisoning and joining in with these other committees and bringing that information back to us. All right, let's move on to old business. COVID-19 update. We've had a little bit from Kate, but Ed, if you've got more to add, anything?
Not a lot. I mean, Hampshire numbers are still up. The governor has announced that from what he has seen from some of the wastewater analysis, at least in the regular portion of COVID, he believes that Omicron has reached its peak and will now start a steep descent. It seems, from his point of view, it seems to be following what has happened in the UK and some other countries. However, while the positivity rate may start dropping from the same trends in those other countries, it'll probably be at least 2 to 3 weeks before the hospitalization rate actually starts to fall, which is a concern because, the hospitals are really at a danger level right now for the number of people that are being hospitalized, so.
Yep. And I believe the last time I looked at the state website information, I'm thinking Southampton has about 180 cases total?
Sounds like the last report that, I had seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's not clear how many are active, or I don't think, unless you know more, Rini, from what your research is on working within the public health sector. In terms of whether the 180 that they quote, are they necessarily still active cases, or are they stay on there as a cumulative number?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
hard to parse out
what's
the
there,
true
but-
numbers, but it's more important to look at the trend, and it had increased from the previous week.
Right, it was higher.
Yeah, it had been, so.
I'm wondering, though, Ed, if, back in the early days in the 2020, we were looking a lot at PPE and that sort of thing. Now with the recommendation towards K95 or N95s, can the employees, can you see if John Workman can access any masks that are K or regular 95 masks for employees?
We have KN95s,
Okay.
which we've been handing out to employees, which we still have.
Okay, good.
And yeah, I'll just say public safety does have a, shall we say, stock of those, because
Right.
actually we had,
You got a big one from
Jerry had
FEMA.
asked me on, I think last Thursday, and so we did another handout through the town hall on those and used them all up. And Ian just brought me over another 200, and Jerry asked him if he'd bring her some more too, so.
Do the schools have enough of the K or N95s that the teachers and staff?
For the schools, do they have the KN95s or N95 now?
I mean, that's what's current.
I haven't heard that we don't,
Okay.
Okay,
so.
good to know, though, yeah, okay. Good, all right, next, CARES Act update. I think all I can say is, looking at reports and receipts and things with Bradley and Ellen, the figures look like we have receipted, invoiced, whatever, a total of $505,885 to the CARES account. And that leaves us, I'm forgetting exactly what we had, but it was around 530. So
532,000.
532. So we've got about 27,000 that we did not spend at the very end.
And I'm going to actually look at that number, because I think what we have does not include some of the school expenditures. So I think it's
Okay.
actually higher than that,
Okay.
because theirs actually comes through in, shall we say, different account numbers.
That's
so.
true. That is true.
Yeah.
That could be true, yep.
Yeah.
And then also, there may be maybe one more set of warrants coming through that would have, anybody that bought something at the very end of December might be just catching up
Right.
with the warrant coming
Yeah, there
forward.
was
So
some on this
There
last-
might be something, but
There was some on this last one, and I believe there'll
We
be
were-
some on this one.
we were quite close. And frankly, I realize it's not every penny, but we wouldn't have been that close.
I thought we voted for any
But
extra to go to
but
school.
Once everything's all squared up, the outstanding, even if your number's right, to say 27,000 is left, we have a $32,000 receipt that's already been paid that could just be
Right.
reallocated.
Yeah.
Didn't we
right? So-
already vote to?
Yeah, no, we
do
talked about
anything
that
else
last
to the
meeting.
school?
That's where the school.
Right.
That they're, because their money came, it comes through, I'm looking at the actual COVID accounts. The
Okay,
school
yeah.
account gets kind of mixed in
Okay.
Right.
a little bit differently.
But it's our intent not to return a penny.
Well, that's the intent. I mean, so I think we're close. I mean, I think we are close with that. So with the
Didn't I also
school
see-
amount, we can do only what we have available, obviously. So at most, there would be about 27,000 at the most, I think, available.
Right, but like I say, I believe that that doesn't account for
Yeah.
some of the school spending.
Right, but I mean, if the school had a larger amount, we could only spend up to that amount. We couldn't do more than that, that's all I'm saying.
Didn't I see an email about a deadline for accounting on the CARES Act? Wasn't there a date that you're supposed to go on the website and,
Yes, there is a final report, which I believe is due, I think, March 1st, but I'll double check that.
Yep.
well, I strongly hope that we don't leave a penny on the table. Because we did vote as a board to apply
Correct.
any remaining
Right.
amounts to the school,
Yep, okay, yep.
especially
So-
since we're only spending, what, 12,
Right.
no, it doesn't count.
But I mean, we had not had a total before. I think
Yeah.
the last time I reported, we didn't have a total of the vendor warrants and payroll warrants to understand how much we had done, so. Okay, East Street Bridge, what's happening? We're seeing some photos here and there of
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will.
aisle driving, et cetera, and,
Yeah, and I'll just let you know, things have been moving along fairly well there. They did have an issue last week with some of the piles that they were putting in, and they had an issue with the east abutment, and when they drove it, it did not, shall we say, meet the tolerances that are required as far as the soil or the ledge are required to have. So they have 3 options to follow up with. So next Monday, they're going to follow the first of the 3 options, which is the least expensive of it, and they're going to redrive that pile. And usually when they will do that, they will find that the test limits are adequate. If that does not happen once they've redriven it, there are 2 other options which are more expensive. One is to basically extract the piles, order new longer piles, and put those in. The other is to partially extract the pile and weld in a section to make it longer. However, there are DOT requirements as to where those welds can be as far as in relation to the surface. So we'll know more on that probably next Tuesday.
okay.
And with this weather, they've been plowing through?
They've still been working, absolutely. Yep, doesn't, for this part of the work, it does not slow them down.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Very good, okay. All right, that's the end of the old business. New business. Our first item is we have now a draft audit report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. And this is from our auditors, Melanson and Company here. And it's about a 60-page report, and I hope everybody's had a chance to at least get through the first iteration of it. I think at this point in time, we're still sort of digesting all of it for tonight. My thought would be that we take a look at sort of the financial highlights that they mention, what's kind of the status of the budget, how they found things, and then go to the management letter.
Sure, and I'll read you
that.
the 3 findings, which they have questions out of the management letter, but I'll go over the
Yeah. I think on
financial
the-
highlights also.
Yeah, because I think what we would like to do, Ed, I mean, from my point of view, and I think we would all be in agreement that, as we, my understanding through reading this is that you and I at least have to accept the fact that we have received a draft once, and probably once we've written, or you've written the response to those audit questions that we discussed. But then we would invite the auditors to join us for a meeting to have any questions that we might have, so that we can ask them directly. Is that?
Basically, the process would be the select board will need to vote to accept the draft findings.
Okay.
Once the select board does that, that will allow you as the chief elected official and myself to sign their
Something in here I saw.
their letter of acceptance of the draft.
Right.
And then once we do that, that would allow the financial team to respond to their 3 findings. And then,
Okay.
then once we have responded to those and sent them back, then I would ask that the auditors be able to join us for a meeting to go over their findings.
Okay. No, I think that's fine. Thanks for clarifying that. I had it sort of generally thought, but not as clearly stated. So, yeah, okay. So with that in mind, knowing that we'll get into more specifics at a later date with the auditors directly, most likely, why don't you give us some of the key points? And if people do have questions, I'm not saying no questions, but we won't go into a page-by-page blow of the audit itself. So Ed, go ahead.
From the financial statements themselves, the financial highlights, there's 3 of them that they found. One, as of the close of the current fiscal year, which would have been fiscal year 2020, the total of assets and deferred outflows exceeded liabilities and deferred inflows by $12,916,841, i.e. the net position. This is a change of a negative $110,752 in comparison to the prior year, which would have been fiscal year 19. Number 2, as of the close of the current fiscal year, governmental funds reported combined ending fund balances of $4,488,107, a change of a positive $1,283,541 in comparison to the prior year. And then at the end of the current fiscal year, unassigned fund balance for the general fund was $748,538, a change of $687 in comparison to the prior year.
Okay. Any questions, comments about that? Okay. All right.
And
I would just suggest we just go to the management letter, which is kind of the,
yeah, and I'll
it's
get
toward the end, I believe. So just for those that are listening, they have broken out the audit report into the fund financial statements, looking at the proprietary funds, the government funds, proprietary funds, fiduciary funds, and then provided some other supplemental information about pension and OPEB accounts as well. So it's quite thorough. Almost toward the, I've got mine separated out, Ed, if you would like it.
yeah.
You got it?
So there were basically 3 findings.
Okay.
2 for the current fiscal year, which is fiscal year 21 for the previous fiscal year. Number 1 for the current fiscal year, improve internal controls over cash and receivables, material weakness, performing timely cash and receivable reconciliations and reviewing all reconciling items are critical procedures to ensure the town's cash and receivable balances are properly reported and controlled. When these reconciliations are not being performed, there is an increased risk that errors or irregularities could occur and go undetected. As of January 2022, cash and receivable balances have not been reconciled since June of 2020. We recommend the town implement measures to ensure that timely, accurate, and independent reconciliation of cash and receivable balances occurs monthly throughout the year. These reconciliations should be documented and signed by the preparer and a reviewer in order to improve documentation and oversight. And then our financial team will have an opportunity for a town's response, and that is one of the things we're, starting with the adjustments to the fiscal year 21 book.
And just to clarify, the financial team will be yourself, Bradley, and Jen?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, did they help us put a plan together to get there, or we're left to our own?
What's that?
In terms of, the reconciliation, there's a 2-year gap here with their citing. I said,
There's a 1-year gap there.
well, 20 to 21,
Yeah.
whatever.
Correct. Right.
But,
So when we respond, do we have to submit to them a plan?
Correct. Right, which will be that the accountant and the
Okay.
treasurer will do a monthly reconciliation of these.
Okay, but I mean, how is that going to be monitored? That it's actually happening?
well, there needs to be some level of a
Right.
monthly reconciliation
Yeah.
report.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
we'll keep up on that.
Yeah, monthly reconciliation report, which we can, certainly
Well-
should be available and maybe presented to select board if you want it.
It's a year and a half.
So I guess I'm interpreting this one way, and I'm interpreting that the reconciliation is happening between the bank and the treasurer's office. Here, they're talking about the reconciliation between the treasurer's office and
And
the
the
town
accounting
accountant.
office. Correct.
Right, because at least at a minimum annually, the town treasurer has to do their reconciliation that ties out. So I'm concerned about it, but I'm not
Okay,
as
as
concerned
concerned,
because the
Right.
cash
The
is
money's
being
there.
balanced.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the
they didn't
entries
find
within the system.
anything untoward about
Yeah.
any of the accounts. It's
Right.
basically that this is not a good practice. We know that we did not have full-time accounting services for
Right.
the year, so it's legitimately a material weakness, and they've
Right.
identified that.
And now that we have a full-time town accountant, then
Yeah, and I would
we know
ju-
this should happen, so.
I would just suggest that in the wording of the response, if what I just said is shown to be accurate, that your response clarifies that the cash is being reconciled on the bank, maybe that's a month behind or 2 months, but that's, it implies it's a whole year, and that's the internal process that's
Yeah.
behind.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I interpret it the same way, and I agree. I think that it should spell that out.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And then finding number 2, properly record expenditure budgets during our review of the town's budget process, including documentation, vote authorizations, and general ledger budget entries. We noted the following issues. During fiscal year 2019, the town approved the purchase of land. However, a budgeted expenditure account was not created in the capital project fund, and the expenditures were charged to a liability account. In fiscal year 2020, the remaining budget amount was recorded in the capital project fund, but a duplicate budgeted expenditure account was also created in the community preservation fund. Some costs and related bond proceeds were incorrectly charged to this fund. In fiscal year 2018, the town approved 2 water capital projects. However, as of the end of fiscal year 2020, expenditures accounts had been created in the general ledger, but authorized budgets were not recorded. We recommend that budgeted expenditure accounts be created as soon as a project is appropriated, and ensure that all project activity is recorded in the correct fund. This will help ensure that all appropriations are properly approved, tracked, or rescinded if needed.
And that sounds like it's already happened. I mean, as soon as the town meeting happened, the accounts were already created for what was approved. Is that the sense that you have?
Yeah, and in this particular case, they were recorded, but it seems that they were just recorded in the wrong areas, so.
So it didn't create any disadvantage that one year it was located here and another year there?
No, and I've already exchanged emails with Tanya on that for going forward, so. Okay. And then for prior fiscal year issues, developed a more formal risk assessment process. The town informally performs its own risk assessment for possible fraud or material misstatement through various policies and procedures. Risk assessment is a management function designed to identify where an organization may be vulnerable to errors and or irregularities. A complete risk assessment process involves a written description of risk areas identified by those charged with governance, management, and officials, and a description of how the organization intends on responding to the risks. We recommend the town implement a more formal risk assessment process that includes written identification of areas where potential fraud or material misstatements to the financial statements may occur. Regular meetings with financial team staff could be used as a starting point for documenting risk assessment discussions and assessments. In evaluating risk areas, particular consideration should be given to situations where a single employee is responsible for performing most of or all responsibilities, since this could create opportunities for fraud to occur and go undetected. If staffing levels do not permit an adequate segregation of duties, the Select Board should provide additional oversight, which should include review and documented sign-off. We also recommend the town establish a formal employee fraud policy to provide staff with guidance in the event they observe or suspect fraud in the workplace or consider setting up a whistleblower hotline. And the formal risk assessment process, I do have a draft of that, and I just need to follow up because at department head meeting a few months ago, we went over it and talked about it. And some the financial team had some suggestions to amend it, so I just need to send it to them and have them formally document their recommendations for amendments, and then I will bring it back to the Select Board to adopt the policy.
Okay. All right, so any further thoughts, questions about this draft audit report for this evening? So at this point in time, we need to have a vote to accept the draft report. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the draft dated January 5th, 2022, and to authorize the chair of the Select Board and the town administrator to sign off on the representation letter dated January 18th, 2022 that was placed in our packet. With the, yeah, I'll just
Yep, okay.
do it in two pieces.
Yep, and could I have a second to that?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, unanimous? And John?
Thank you.
And I don't know that I need to do this as a vote, but when Melanson does come down to do their in-person presentation, the one document that is not here that I would like to see is a list of all journal entries that they are requesting be made to the books. And my reason is not necessarily to go through them, but to see how many there are, and as we go forward, there should be fewer and fewer journal entries being made to the books. If generally you only have 20 and there's 300 to start with, there could be another issue. So as a, that's all.
Okay. All right. I don't know that needs to be a motion. I think that's just a point of information.
I guess the other question I have is how many, are any of these findings repetitive of findings that they've had in the past?
The last one is.
The last one sounded very
Correct.
familiar to me.
The last one is, that they're
Yeah, that's why it's a
categorized.
prior year's
Okay.
kind of.
That's the way they're categorized. So these are 2 new findings and 1 carryover from previous audit. Right. Yeah. Okay, so that at least gets us a bit farther down the line on this, and we'll look forward to, when do you think the financial team might tackle the responses on this, Ed, and when might we have?
Well, you've accepted them, well, actually, all 3 of us have them, so I will just actually convene a meeting of the 3 of us, and we'll go over them.
Okay. And do you think it's realistic to, obviously, we can get Melanson sometime in February, but is it realistic for our first meeting, do you think, or?
I don't know, I'll reach out and find out.
Okay, all right. That would be great. All right. Okay, we have the expenditure report for this week here. This goes through January 13th, I believe. It's just the expenditure report, not the revenue report, right? And let's see, anybody have any things that you were questioning here, just for people's information, on the total general fund?
I have a couple of questions.
Expenses right now are $9,181,463, and that leaves us a balance of $9,255,857. So here we are, basically halfway through the year, and we're halfway through our budget. So that seems like a good thing. But yes, Reading, please.
And I think that a lot of the expenses are very much in line, so good going. Just a couple of questions. Regional lockup, wasn't that one of the town meeting? So has that not changed? It's 645%.
Which page is that?
Over?
Do you know?
Yeah, that's one of those ones that they actually had, because the state budget was adopted after July 1st, they had cashed our check and sent us one back, so we just have to put that back from a revenue into the correct account.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that would already been kind of taken care of.
Yep. Anybody else?
And
Yep.
I have a question about revolving funds.
Okay.
Same thing these are all over expended? Is,
Correct, because they don't have beginning
because they don't have
balances.
beginning
So-
balances, so it's just carried over as an expense.
Which is part of the fiscal 21 true-up.
Right, so that'll get corrected once
Right.
we end up having our,
Yes.
So once we have the 21,
Factors, yeah.
once we have the 21 closed out, we'll have ending balances and opening balances for this fiscal year that will be able to fill in the blanks on these reports, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. John?
So there's about a half a dozen items on here, and we don't need to go through them all. It's just there's one on the first page. It's the senior work-off program wages.
On the
So
first
there
page?
was nothing budgeted. We spent $7,100. It shows a deficit of $7,100, but it's 100% expense. So it's,
work? Yeah.
what I'm guessing, well, I don't know the answer. Was nothing budgeted for that?
No, and this is the one that the IRS made us change about a year ago, and it used to be not done through a W-2, which now it has to be. It was never budgeted before, but it was just journal entries through there, so I just have to find out what the correct way to handle this is. I had created that last year with the change, so it's probably one of those things that it's a journal entry and does not need to be accounted for here in the actual budget process.
Okay.
So this is, the $7,100 represents what, though? The value of,
That is what was paid to the individuals that perform services under that senior
under the
work-off
program.
program.
I see. Okay.
Because that gets treated, because ultimately it ends up being an abatement against their taxes, not a credit towards their taxes, right? It's an abatement,
Correct.
right? And then I think, again, on the second page, ambulance maintenance and fire truck maintenance. I believe the answer there is just because of the way the budget's done, there's nothing broken out initially.
Right.
and
No,
goes
and
deficit,
it
then
was
requires town
done
meeting.
as a way for the chief to, shall we say, establish a baseline to know what those accounts were.
Okay. For how many years have we been doing it this way?
Well, I'm basically going to tell them this year is, okay, you either deduct that amount from your expense account and put it in there so we can account against it now because you have a track record, or if you're not going to do that, then we are not going to account against it and we're not going to budget for that. So he will
Okay.
just have to start charging it to his, whether it happens to be ambulance expense or to the fire expense.
Yeah, and I get the idea of separating them and tracking it that way. I mean, that's the way I would do it, but you got to put some seed money in there to start with.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
on its face, it's if you just look at that single line item, it's deficit spending,
Right.
right, which,
right.
okay.
Yeah, that's been a couple of years. You're right.
I think last year was the first year he tried to break it out
Yeah, so we can
to
track
be able
it.
to monitor the actual cost of expenses on, especially the fire expense. fire truck expense. Okay. Other questions about the expense report? I don't think anything else jumped to my attention. Like Rini said, most everything is looking like it's on target in terms of the percentages of the allocated budget, being spent. People look like they're managing their department budgets quite well. Okay. No other questions? Are we fine with that? We'll move on. Right. Thank you very much. Next, Arpa funds update.
And you'll find in your packet that last bulletin that I was referencing.
The new rule?
The new rules, I think it has gotten, a heck of a lot clearer what we are able to spend on ARPA funds, both within capital expenditures, whether that be water or sewer or broadband expenses, as well as for whether you call it premium pay, whether it be to institute, if people were furloughed or their hours cut, to, bring them back, for incentivizing pay for individuals to work. But like I say, we didn't really furlough anyone or what have you under that. So it's extensive, but I think we've got a good amount of, shall we say, both clear and gray area to expend these, funds on, again, whether it's COVID testing, further vaccines, locally. Yeah, I think we can continue our work and plug some of the holes that have been caused by this. One of the things that came out of it is, and this may benefit us, because when they first came out with the revenue loss or local revenue loss piece and the calculations to that, it was mind-boggling to figure it out, and it really didn't look like it would benefit us. This is much more simple, and I think it very possibly will benefit Southampton for us to prove some revenue loss.
Okay. Good. Yeah, there's definitely, more than the couple pages that we had seen before of just those generic 4 categories. And this is 40 pages of much more detail. So everybody hang on to this, and we'll be referring to it quite a bit, I have a feeling. So don't lose it.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones they've sent out.
Yeah. Well, and
I had gotten it, and then I know John had forwarded along to everyone
Yep,
too.
no, we'd all seen it, yeah. So it's called the overview of the final rule. So, I think it is the final rule at the moment, anyway. But yeah, that definitely does give a lot more information and a lot more clarity in terms of how far we can stretch things to make them, to determine whether they fit or not under the ARPA funds. Yeah, Rini.
Ed, you mentioned about the web maintenance would be something that would be covered, and at the town meeting, we authorized additional spending on a website through the end of the year. Do you remember where the funds were taken from?
I believe we took them from,
Retirement?
no, I believe we took those from either IT services or
Yeah.
technology.
Okay, but it wasn't operational stabilization or free cash,
No,
right?
because it was a small amount. And that, though,
That's maintenance.
that's maintenance. That's the current person that updates it a couple hours a month.
We're
Right.
talking basically
Redoing.
a
Yeah.
website
Yeah, that's a totally different animal.
redesign and implementation.
Yeah, totally
Okay.
different animal.
More user-friendly and
Yeah.
more friendly to us that are putting out the information, because
Yep.
with today's technology, there is a lot more friendly ways that
Right.
now these departments and boards and committees can update a good portion of their own
Yeah.
Yeah.
web pages themselves, rather than sending it
Rather than-
along
Yeah,
to someone.
definitely needed.
Rather than having a centralized system. So
Yeah.
that's where we want to be going with this. And the tech committee's got one of their people, Dan Breen, I think, is the person that they've allocated as kind of the lead on any kind of website work.
Yeah.
So that's definitely
The other thing is, I read this from front to back, and they dance around, like, everything that they say covers, it involves emergency planning and services and storage. They come all but say that it can go towards facilities. And I didn't gather from what I read that no one said public safety, complex, or building, and yet there's so much about what they said applies to a public safety building.
Yeah. Now, however, you'll find a little sheet in there, and I forget exactly where it is, that on capital expenditures, there's like a category of under $1 million, and then I think there's a category that's $1 million to maybe $10 million or whatever, which has different requirements to it as far as written authorization. So it may be a possibility.
Yeah, I thought that they all but said it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
it's
re-
toward page 30, I think, is that? the-
Yeah, okay, I'll relook at it, but it just seems like, gee whiz.
I know, it's, yeah.
There needs to
Okay.
be written justification.
Pardon?
Written justification, so this page, on page 30, it has a little chart,
Yeah.
yeah. And so anything like greater than 1 million or 10 million needs written
Right.
justification.
Right.
Yeah,
But it doesn't actually come out and say,
No.
for a building.
that you can
Yeah,
use
what
it
they
for
kind of do is lead to the fact of kind of $1 million or under, it's kind of, I'll say your own responsibility. Once you
Right.
get into that 1 million to 10 million,
Right.
basically you have to write and get justification and acceptance for it.
It's implied.
Yep, okay, and then just tying in with the ARPA, I think everybody knows that the survey is out on the street, it's live. When I last looked, there were 220 responses so far, and that's been basically a week, a week, maybe 9 days that it's been out. So everybody who's listening, please do chime in and take the survey. It's online. Go to the town website and you'll just click on the link. There is a QR code for those that want to do it with their phones. There are hard copies available at the library, at the senior center, and in the town clerk's office. And there's a makeshift box out front, well labeled, saying ARPA surveys. So please return them in the drop box out in front, for those of you that are doing the hard copies. To this point, I have only had 2 people let me know that they've been having issues with the survey, and I've been trying to look at it technically, and I'm not able to replicate the issues that they're having, and I'm still working on it, but the fact that others have been able to submit, I'm thinking that we don't have a major problem here, so that's my hope.
And it may be just individualize what they're using for antivirus or
I
cybersecurity
don't know.
software, too.
Possibly, I don't know, but I think things are rolling along, and recently it's been put up, I think, on, well, it's certainly out on the Southampton Community Facebook page as well, and I believe it was on, John, I think you might have put it in the Norris newsletter, did you? And then someone told me it was up on the Norris Parents Facebook page as well. So hopefully we'll get more people doing it. It really will take you all of 5 minutes, and for those that do have school-age kids, you will complete the entire survey, which is a total of 12 questions. Those that don't have kids, you kind of get kicked out and exited at about question 9. So, moving on. A drink.
I wonder, while you refresh yourself, I wonder if it's possible to see if at the library, if there's now that they're open to the public, limited hours, but they are open, if there's a standalone computer or one of the computers over there that could be accessed that somebody could test drive the survey on, and for those rare, unique exceptions where someone's having an issue accessing it, they could be directed over there, and perhaps with a little guidance from whoever's at the library, they might be able to get them on the initial prompt as an alternative.
Good point, okay.
And the senior center also has computers.
Excuse me, yeah. Okay, but I think things are working for the most part, so I hope so. Well, sorry about this, guys. The survey is open until February 14th, so you still have time to take your survey.
Till February 14th?
Yep. Francine, next.
Okay.
Bylaws.
The bylaws, review by the select board before we pass it on to, and make the decision tonight whether or not you want to pass it on to the legal team for review, or you want to send it back for revision. So we can go through them if you've had a chance to look at them. Just to mention that 3 of the 4 have been vetted in public meeting, and so we had an online comment, we posted them online and had online comment, and we also had a public meeting at which other people brought other information forward, and we also, read off all the comments that we received via email concerning the bylaws of soliciting and canvassing, numbering buildings, and nuisance/peace and quiet. Those 3 were all publicly discussed. The 4th one is a new bylaw on naming of public buildings and structures. So let's start with the one on soliciting and canvassing. I'm assuming that's the order they were in your packet.
Yeah, and I think, let's not
Just
go
leave
through.
it, no, I don't want to go through it
Yeah,
all,
no, I
but
think
just
if
if
people
there are
have
any comments,
Comments or
let's
questions, I mean,
take them down and make a decision whether or not we're moving it forward.
yeah, the intent, right, is to
Right, move
try
it
to get
forward
these
to
to
the
the legal
lawyers.
team so that KP Law has time to review them, and with luck, hopefully be on our warrant for the May town meeting.
Yep.
Okay. So, go ahead, start with soliciting and canvassing then?
So I just have a general question. I mean, I feel like the whole process of the bylaw review has been, they have been so much improved in terms of, like plain speak and readability and updating them. I guess I didn't find it as much with this particular bylaw, and I'm not sure if, like, for example, the first section, purpose, that's like one sentence. So I just found in general, I don't know whether or not there was a different process. In the past, I just feel like, I just felt like this was like 6 pages long, and it just seems like it's just very lengthy.
Well, because there are lots of nuances and issues raised with it. I mean, we went through this not just among ourselves, but with especially the chief of police in putting together, permitting plan so that there was a way that this process could be managed, or the people could be, could kind of self-select to be off of any kind of canvassing list and so on and so forth. I know it's complicated. You're not wrong about the first sentence.
And
It's
just
now
a
that I'm
couple
looking at it, yes.
comments, and one is on page 6, it says check with KP Law. I'm assuming that's not part of the bylaw.
Right.
And then you put fines in here, and I thought that our Attorney General recommended not putting fines in here.
In some they do, and in some they don't. If it's in here, it will also be on the same, on the fine list,
Yeah.
if we should change it.
Is that the non-criminal ticketing one?
Right, the non-criminal ticketing. And again, this,
Yeah.
most of this, we came through another police department.
Oh, so this is not the original one?
Oh, yes, this is, but I'm saying a lot of the points were taken from a town that already had this in place.
Right.
That these were the rules and the procedure that their police department put together in
Right.
terms of,
And then had been given to us actually by our police chief.
By
I
our
mean, yeah, so
police
it came to us
department,
through
yes.
them. So this is what, part of the issue, I think, for the police is that they just have, at this point in time, there's no way to enforce anything.
yeah.
And so this maybe goes into more detail than needed, but, definitely having a badge and, registering with the, the town, with the police department, et cetera. In terms of the, the violations and the fees, I think we're going to leave it in the hands of KP Law. I mean, the last time we didn't put something in, and that was for the wetlands bylaw, and they did want that
A fee in there.
specifically in there, the penalty, I believe, in there. Whereas in other cases, some of our bylaws don't have it. It just refers to fees as may be set by the select board or annual
Right.
special town meeting.
Right.
So they're kind of all over the place, and it's only been recently on that one bylaw that we were told to put it in, but it wasn't clear whether that was specific to that kind of a bylaw with the state, having jurisdiction over wetlands, if that was a specific thing. So we're not totally sure, I guess, where that belongs, but we were trying to not have a situation where it's so specific that whenever there would be a change, that you had to go back and amend the bylaw. I mean, that's the purpose of having a fee schedule and a non-criminal ticketing one, so that
So you don't have to go to town meeting
Yeah.
every time you increase it.
if things change, so.
But something like this, it was recommended that we
I
put
wasn't
it actually
sure.
in here so
Right.
that people know from the get-go,
Right.
without having to go look at the fine, already know
Right,
what the violation represents in terms of dollars.
yep. Okay, any other comments, questions about soliciting and canvassing? This does set some hours, Monday through Saturday between the hours of noon and 5 o'clock.
And a permitting process, which we currently don't have.
Right,
And then the costs associated with that will be periodically reviewed based on the expense that the police department has to go to issue these permits.
right. And there are exceptions
Yes.
to those who, that doesn't apply to youth groups,
Right.
religious charitable groups, et cetera. So there are some exceptions in here. And I believe this is also somebody who, I don't see I had it here somewhere, but somebody who also puts a no soliciting sign in their yard.
Right.
This obviously would, that would serve as a,
Right, and also if
Clear
they notify the police that they do not wish to be disturbed, that when the person or the canvasser goes to the police department to get a permit, they will also get a list of houses they are not permitted to go to. So there's kind of like a registry for that.
And is the cost of this permit listed in here anywhere?
No, that is going to be determined based on the cost to the police department. There will be an application fee, and the penalties are in here, but there will be an application fee that we'll have to come up with based on what this whole process might entail for the police.
And that would include the cost of the photo identification?
Yep.
right, yeah. all that-
Absolutely.
That kind of thing, yep. Yep. Okay. All right, if nothing else on that one, let's keep on moving on to maybe let's do the other two that have already
Okay,
been,
the other two that went before the town, the public for a meeting, was the nuisance, peace and quiet one. And here we're talking
Back is
about
the naming
the
one.
noise in the neighborhood, so to speak, an easier way of saying it.
town view, though, this, doing the three that have gone to the town meeting, publication, information meeting,
Okay.
where we've already got public comments. Yep, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so, I mean, when we had the meeting, the main concern on nuisance and peace and quiet had to do with, let me just get out of order. Had to do with something that I didn't know what they were called, Jake brakes. Apparently, they're truck brakes for these big trucks that go through, and apparently that's excessive. That bothers a lot of people as excessive noise. That was something that was really emphasized by several people at that meeting.
Yep.
I have a comment about the second paragraph.
Okay.
I just want you to know that I don't believe in having this bylaw. I don't think that we should have those kind of social mores, and I think that it's very difficult to enforce, and I think that they're so specific, and there's so many exceptions that but I would not, vote to stop it to go in front of the voters. But personally, I don't support this particular bylaw. But it says, in the second paragraph, excessive noise is prohibited in the town of Southampton at all times, and especially, I think you should either leave it at all times between the hours, whatever. I think you're already a little contrary by saying at all times and especially between the above hours. So I think if you're trying to make a strong statement, then it makes sense to not to have it be contrary.
Okay, so excessive noise prohibited in the town between the hours of 10 and 7, 10 PM and 7 AM. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm just, yeah.
Therefore implying that it's okay otherwise, other times outside that window.
I thought she was recommending that it say excessive noise is prohibited in the town of Southampton at all times, period.
Or between the,
And
I mean,
especially
I'm just saying,
between.
to me, it just reads a little contrary, because it says at all times, and then it says especially between these hours. I mean, if you're saying at all times, then I think you should, I don't know why you're then saying especially between these times, if you're already saying at all times. Either say between 10 PM and 7 or at all times.
Well, I think, yeah, when it would be kind of enforceable would be the hours of 10 to 7. You want to discourage excessive noise at all times, not to disturb neighbors, but in the event, but especially during those times is what we were emphasizing here. So,
Well, I mean, you can take it or leave it, I'm just saying that it just seems like, when I read it, it seems like,
I mean, if you just put in between the hours of 10 PM and 7 AM,
that means everybody can make excessive noise any other time.
Well,
I know,
What if you're having like a parade down the street? Are you like in the middle of, like on a Sunday or Saturday?
There are.
that would be an
there's a list
exception.
Okay, that's the exception, yes, yes, there are the exceptions,
that
yes.
pages
includes
of exceptions.
parades and emergency vehicles, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
all those things,
Is there?
yes.
I guess
Let me see the exception.
I mean,
There's a
on
lot of
its,
exceptions.
Section 4.
Emergency videos.
Yeah, go ahead, John, sorry.
I mean, on its face, I agree, Maureen. I mean, I think when this goes to the ballot, I won't vote in favor of this, but putting it before the citizens is fine with me.
Yeah.
And to me, it's one thing, if you want to limit noise between 10 PM and 7 AM, the quiet hours, you might get me with that, but to do it all day, and then when I look down at the bottom, number 3, first bullet point, excessive noise produced by a motor vehicle, motorcycle, dirt bike, and all-terrain vehicle by their horns, engine, or exhaust system. But if you happen to own a large section of land, and you're utilizing equipment on your property, and your neighbor decided to build on the property line, what's excessive to me may not be excessive to them, and, I should be free to do within reason. So I think if you did a blanket statement, 24/7 is just excessive, is too restrictive.
But 10 to 7,
Well, I get that,
yeah.
at the nighttime.
So
and the
so
quiet
take out,
hours.
it's the all times and especially is
Yeah.
what's the
And
confusing
just
part.
say between the hours of 10 and
Okay,
7.
no, that's understood, yeah.
But there are these noises that do disturb people at other hours, and, I mean, people, and again, I'm coming back to the public meeting that we had on this. They did talk about ATVs, they talked about motorcycles with enhanced exhaust systems, and the planes from barns that fly over in terms of the schedule and all of that. But there were a number of issues that people identified as excessive noise that they were concerned about. And
But
that
how
in-
do you
that includes
enforce
these
that?
things.
How are we going to enforce motorcycles that drive by and planes that fly
We
over?
can't, but we can get, if we can get, and what they asked for is, can we get a schedule so that we can make people aware? And so
For the
we'll try
planes,
to do that.
I understand, but for motor, yeah.
Yeah, and the enforcement here is police, fire, board of health, building commissioner, or their designee. That's what it says at the enforcement at the number 6 here. So, I mean, if you have a complaint, somebody's got a loud party at whatever hour is not within that time frame,
A loud party, I understand
you know,
that, yeah.
the police would be called, and they would usually be the first one on the scene to go and, at least give them a warning, tell them to quiet down, whatever they would normally do, right?
Yes.
It's more, I don't know.
And I've got a comment.
Yeah,
You'll
go for it.
probably say I'm nitpicking, but excessive noise. which has a volume that is plainly audible at a distance of 150 feet from the aforementioned locations in which or from which it originates, is considered to be loud, disturbing, injurious, unnecessary, and unlawful. I own 40 acres. My house is in the middle of that 40 acres. Are you telling me 150 feet from my house on my own property, that is now loud and excessive? Because that's what this says.
You mean if you put it on your property line and 150
I didn't say
feet
that.
from your line to your
No, he's
neighbor?
saying if he's in the middle of his property,
Yeah,
I mean,
It's
that
300 feet from
Yeah.
any possible line.
then
that wouldn't apply, right?
that wouldn't apply.
I think there's a lot that's subjective in some way.
And I'm guessing the answer is no, but they're currently under Mass General Law, there's not a simplified ordinance defining disturbing the peace?
I don't know.
We'll have to double check that again.
I mean, my guess is not, since
I
this
don't
is
think-
what's
I don't
before
think so. I
us,
mean,
but...
you know, again, I think the committee's gone through looked at various towns and tried to see what makes sense and how have other towns dealt with this. And, I mean, so it's the distance of 150 feet, okay, that's
Right.
Ed's point.
And also, to
your
be
point.
fair to the committee is only acting upon the request of the citizens.
Right, and this is
You
one
know,
that has been,
This is what came before them, so...
Yes.
it's been requested and it's
I
been
mean,
coming.
we
on
put
for
it
sure.
out there, whatever comments we got back were incorporated into this document.
Yeah.
So, as I said, we didn't have Jake breaking in the
Yeah.
original version.
Yeah, the biggest one was probably that, actually.
So,
And jake breaking is annoying.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we move on to the next two?
pardon?
Or,
Just for a point
I mean-
of reference, disturbing the peace is not the same as nuisance and peace and quiet. It's very specific in regards to like people acting out. Like there has to be action with it.
okay, good to know.
Okay.
All right, let's look at the third one.
Okay, the
and
third
then
one
get through
is
these.
numbering buildings. And again, this is something in the interest of public safety and for emergency responsiveness,
Yeah,
because minutes count, and I can't emphasize enough how much the chief of police and the fire chief, supported this because they're the people who have to find the houses in the event of emergency, and this just facilitates that. So we're not saying if you don't have a number on your house that you have to put one now. But if the property turns over, the new owner would have to put a number. If you do any renovation or permitting, for additions and things like that, then you would have to put a number. So it is a gradual transition if your house is not numbered or your plot isn't numbered.
I just think it borders too much on uniformity. And, people who suffers if they can't find their house? It's the resident. So I think it's one thing to notify people that this might be a helpful thing to do whenever they take out a permit, but requiring them to have one that's so many inches wide, high, and what side of the door, and how many feet from whatever. I think that there should be a certain degree of personal responsibility and choice.
Well, I think if people have to respond, they need to look in the general area in which they can find the appropriate address. And if you specify it needs to be to the left side of your driveway, then that's where they'll look. But, they can't get somewhere and start looking around and trying to figure out where the number is. And that's why the uniformity is in there.
Right, but I'm saying from the standpoint of personal choice, that's something that someone has to accept as a consequence if they choose not to do this. I'd almost prefer that people...
I don't know that anybody,
Go ahead, Reed.
I'd almost prefer that somebody had the opportunity to sign saying, I received a copy of a recommendation, and I choose to or not to number my house.
Well, and for the most part, this is for going forward, right, Francine?
yes,
It's not
that's what I was saying.
everybody who's, this
This is
is
the
for
pe-
new housing,
Right,
basically.
and I'm saying anybody that's new, that's building a new house, I would want them to have a choice. But that's just my opinion.
All right. Again, we've had both, building commissioner, fire chief, police chief, everybody's been involved in these
Yes.
comments.
Right, and the townspeople will ultimately vote.
That's fine. We just want to move them
Right,
to be
we
in
do.
front of them.
So this will go forward.
If they
yes.
crash and burn at the town meeting, so be it, but,
Yeah, we need to move it along.
That's the main point.
This was what was, when we put it out for the public, we incorporated any comments, any feedback into these documents to move it to the next level, and that would be obviously here, then to the lawyers, then, the ultimate decision is the town,
Is
it's the town
voters.
meeting. If they
Absolutely.
want it or they don't want it.
right, John?
So Francine, is that your motion to move all three to KP Law?
All four, there's another
Or all
fourth one we
four?
haven't
There's
done.
a fourth one yet,
I'll second the motion.
okay.
All right. Any further discussion? The fourth one was the naming of public buildings, structures, bridges, and public lands.
Because I'm sorry, Joy, because my understanding is once KP Law reviews it, it will come back to us with
They
their
will.
thoughts and
Right.
comments.
Yeah,
So we're not on the hook for anything until
Right.
we hear back from legal.
Right.
Right.
This is just to move it to
I
the
just
next
have a
step.
question. For the fourth one, naming public buildings, did we need public comment on that?
we did not do public comment on
No.
that one because it doesn't seem to be as, I think,
Public safety oriented, I mean,
the others were more public safety and public, whatever, more public
Affecting the
safety
public
kind of
more?
oriented, yeah. We'd only, I think the Bylaws Committee, I'm sorry to speak, Francine, had only done this public notification on these couple because we knew that there was a lot of comment. The people had come to us saying, we want this bylaw, and there was a lot of interest and a lot of comment on it, so that's why the idea for the public meeting happened.
right.
It's not been a routine thing to have that before it even comes to select board, but some that are likely to be highly controversial, it just seemed like it was a good thing to get that input.
Right, and they had a lot to do with public safety, which you're talking about strangers coming to your house as solicitors.
Yeah.
You're talking about noise that disturbs, the peace, if someone is ill, and,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, as well as the,
All right, so we have,
the last one, they were all numbering your house. I mean, that was all public
right,
safety issues. This is really more, has less impact on the public, except in name.
I think this could be controversial, though, to be honest with you. Joy, did you have another question?
No, I just wanted to know if there was public comment on it, that's all.
okay.
I had two questions. One is, does it say anywhere, or does it need to, that the person is a resident of Southampton, or no?
No.
Okay.
Let me just see.
I didn't read it, I didn't see it there. I just didn't know.
It talks about the nominee's
Let me see the
service to the
criteria.
town
Yeah.
and contribution to the town.
Extraordinary service is, no, it
So it
does
doesn't
not
have to
say
be a
that the
resident of
person.
Southampton.
I mean, that would make sense, so after we get it back, if we move it on to the lawyers, that would be something, it has to be a Southampton resident.
Before you go that far,
Yeah,
someone spent 75 years in this community, was a resident,
Yeah.
moved away,
Right,
or passed away.
yeah.
They're obviously no longer a resident. Do you want to limit that?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot of times, like at UMass, they named the, who was the representative from the Berkshires?
Oh, John Olver?
Huh?
John Olver, or?
Over, but also, there was another one that was very.
Oh, I know who you mean. They got the wildlife sanctuary for
Yeah.
him.
Anyway, he was a public,
Not O'Neill, oh, God. I know who you mean,
wasn't
too.
Boland, was it? Anyway, there
No.
was somebody that was a representative who had been a huge influence on a town. So I'm not saying that it should be or not. I was just wondering, that's all.
well, or,
The other thing is, should it say something about, I'm just wondering, thinking about all these statues that are now coming down and, buildings that are now being, their names are being removed because they're finding out after the fact that, they weren't such a nice person after all. Should it say something like citizen in good moral standing or something like that? I don't know if that's even necessary, but I just thought I would raise it. I mean, I'd hate to have, somebody be nominated and then find out afterwards, or it would be good to do some kind of a background check to make sure that, they,
I do know that this one is stirring the most interest out in the community. There seems to be an uptick, at least uptick in outreach to me on how do we get this field named after this person? How do we do this street? How do we want to do this and that? And I'm like, I refer them to Francine. Bylaws is working
I
on it.
know, it's called.
Bylaws is working on our process
yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
Well, then this would be of interest. I mean, there are, if you look at Section 3, I mean, talking about, the ability of committees and so forth to name subsections without going through the larger process of the select board and the town.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a name of some room at the school, for example,
Right.
or within the library or
But the
something
school
like that.
committee
It's a
can
different
designate.
process for them.
It doesn't all have to be, as big a process, as long a process as.
But in terms of, okay, so the point about the residency, could that be stated some particular way? I mean, the citizen in good moral standing, I think you could potentially add that.
Yeah, I mean.
I think that some kind of background check would have to be done. If we're going to name something this big after somebody, I would want at least some sort of a background check to make sure that, they weren't convicted of some felony, and here we are naming a building after them, or something like that.
Well, it very clearly says in every instance that no structure or building would be named after any living person, so.
Any what?
Any living
person.
Any living
Living
person
person,
or
right.
commercial enterprise.
Right.
So the person would not be living, but would have lived at some
Yeah.
point in time.
Yeah, so it could be-
Contributed to Southampton,
In order to have been,
yes.
well, yeah, some level of service and contribution to the town, somebody who would have.
Former residents,
Yeah.
resident, yes.
Resident or former resident, or, I don't know.
I'm not even sure it needs to say something, I just wanted to ask, that's all.
Okay.
It might
No.
be better not to say something and just have it be allowed to have it be anybody.
Right.
I'm just
No.
wanted to ask you, that's all.
Yep, okay.
But I do think it should say something about citizen in good moral standing.
Yeah.
All right,
A
Greenie.
citizen in good
Was it
standing.
the Silvio Conti one? that you
Silvio
were thinking of?
Conti building.
yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Just
so
came to me when I was trying
I
to
would
find
like
it.
to maybe suggest that we have a motion on the floor, I think, in a
Yes.
second, I think we do.
Yes.
Okay.
Would the bylaws committee want to just tweak this with a couple
The
additions
naming one, yes.
before it goes on, and then we'll get.
And then we'll get it to Ed.
Okay, all right, so the motion might be that these couple additions will be looked at
On the naming bylaw.
on the 91
yes.
with the bylaw committee, and then get the whole package of the 4 to Ed, to send on to KP Law after that.
Okay, that's fine.
If that's agreeable? All right, so that motion slightly revised. All right, could I have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? All right. Next one, audit FY '21 planning. Ed?
Yes, would the select board like me to send a request to Melanson for a proposal to move forward with since the agreement we have with them has expired with the fiscal year 20 audit, we'll need somebody for the 21 and maybe going forward.
And because, we just refresh our minds, because we have someone else closing out 21, Melanson is still eligible to be
Correct.
our auditor for another year anyway.
I don't know if they do a one-year contract, though.
They will,
They will?
they will.
Yeah. We could at least start with that, and then if, if it turned into something longer, we could always amend that, right?
Well, I'll ask him for a couple of proposals.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so any thoughts on that? Would it
Do we
be
have that in the
Melanson
budget?
only?
Any recommendations of any
You
other
have that
firms we
in the
should
budget right now?
pursue?
Yes.
That would be my question. So I'm in full support of sending the request to Melanson, but is there anybody else we can send it to at the same time? For two reasons. One, to avoid the appearance of a monopoly, and two, in the event that they just triple their price. And that's the only one we have when we start running out of time. But maybe it's not an issue because we're starting the process now.
Auditing services are exempt from Chapter 30B. That being said, if you want to compare multiple firms, then I would say we would need to write an RFP and send that out to multiple firms and advertise it.
Is there a middle ground where we could do an interest level for a one-year contract and then be looking for an RFP for further?
That's what I was, that was
for a
what I
longer-term
would-
contract?
That's what I would suggest.
Any of those are possible.
Okay.
I know when we signed the original contract for the 3 years, it was a pretty significant savings to do it for 3 years. And if we're pretty happy with them, I don't know, we looked into other, we obviously can't use the current
Right.
folks.
Yep.
I don't know if you have any other
Could-
suggestions?
Yeah, could not use Kinsher for fiscal year '21. There are some other auditing firms out there, whether they're interested and fit in, I don't know. I've now, in 3 different communities, had Melanson as auditors for all of those, and I've always been satisfied with them. So, I mean, it's up to the board, but
Yeah.
What is the current budget amount for the audit for this year? I think it's 35?
I think it's 21.5 or 25.
Oh,
Hang on, and I
Be right in our,
think I can,
It's in the budget,
we'll find it on my phone. Hang on a second.
in the expense.
yeah. Do we have, John, do you have names of other audit firms that you would, I mean, short of sending out an RFP, I guess, I don't know that we can just ask for any kind of proposal. We've got to actually put it out formally as an RFP, I would assume,
Yeah, I mean,
which might take time to develop an RFP. I'm more conscious on it. I hear you in terms of the competition. I'm all for that and having that open.
yeah, so I would expect that their cost should be less than what it traditionally was, because they're intimately aware of the situation that's going on here.
Yeah.
The fact that we've already retained another CPA firm who's their peer to come in and get the books up to speed so they can audit, I've got to imagine there's going to be less work. So if they come in charging the same price, holding their price, it's not really,
aside from the fact that the price that they quoted, don't forget, was 3 to 4 years ago.
right.
Well,
I'm not opposed to hearing what they have to say.
yeah.
you know.
Well, shall we start with at least asking them to give us a one-year proposal and see, or a one-year and a 3-year proposal? And see what they say, and if the prices seem out of whack, we definitely want to go out with an RFP after that? Would that make any sense?
I'm thinking, I mean, we would need, I mean, we're into this year already, and we're behind schedule, so I think going with them for at least a year while we solicit other proposals would make sense. And they could be one of them.
Yeah.
21.5,
21.5 is what our current budget is?
yes.
All right, so do we have a motion then? I think I'm hearing a one-year, go ahead and ask them for a one-year proposal and cost, yes?
That would be my motion, yes.
So that's a motion on the floor,
I'll second.
all right. Any discussion about that? Would you like to further discuss that?
I'd like to know what the 3-year would be.
Okay. So would we amend the motion to have a one-year and a 3-year proposal from them?
I would be, I mean, it's just to get information, really, at this particular point. What would they charge? What would be the difference? So, yes, I mean, I'd prefer to get both information if I can.
Okay.
There's no obligation, really.
Right.
But if we accepted the one and we decided to still go and looked at their 3-year proposal, but we still issued an RFP to get some competing interest here and some comparison with others, that wouldn't preclude us from doing that, would it? No.
No, and I would think if we decided to take them, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we decided to take them for the 1 year
Right.
and then go out to bid for a 3-year,
Yep.
they would certainly be eligible to
To
put
join
in a
the bid.
proposal for that, right?
You wouldn't want to go up to bid for this Proposal,
Proposal.
yes. This is one type of service
Yeah.
you would not want to take the lowest bidder
Yeah.
and be required to take the
Correct, yeah,
lowest
yeah,
bidder.
you're right, you're right. Correct.
You want to be able to weigh
I hear you, Ed.
what the services they're giving and
Right.
All right.
basically the company reputation.
So I think what I'm
I hear
hearing
you.
is some level of proposal for going out to Melanson for asking for both a 1-year and a 3-year proposal and cost estimate for services for auditing the town books. Is that correct? Yes. Correct my language. If not, all in favor? No, not yet in favor. Anybody have a second to that? If that's a motion, I'll make the
Second.
motion.
I'll second.
All right. Can we have a vote, please? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, I'm not hearing any opposed. Ed, you are authorized to approach them accordingly, all right? Thank you. Is there any other business that can't wait until our next February meeting?
Could I just ask that at some point, either in the next meeting or the meeting after, we have a discussion about the line item on the cannabis? Because now we got the second payment, we had 4,000 something, now we have 14 additional. We talked about doing some education, so if we could just have a conversation about that.
Okay. Yep. And I think the other thing we had talked about too was having the charter rep come in and talk to us about service in town in general. I don't know how
Yes.
soon we want to do that, within the next meeting or two, whenever that person's available, to just
Yeah, that'd be great.
explain their coverage from their point of view and how wonderful they think their service is, and maybe we'll have some comments from citizens about what they're experiencing. I haven't seen too much lately, but I'm sure that it hasn't gone away for many people. So, John?
Just the, it doesn't necessarily have to get on by the next agenda, but if we could plan to address this in the month of February, I believe we have a pending request for consideration for a home rule petition to the state to expand the number and types of liquor licenses within the town. Specifically, the request is from one existing business.
Okay.
Maybe I did some research, so I have an idea of how to do this, but maybe from the board's point of view, how we go about doing this and getting the facts and holding our hearings. I know the first step is it has to go on the town meeting has to approve it.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right.
and Chris, I can email you that stuff
Yeah, if you would.
separately.
Yeah, I think I've seen that, so please do
Okay.
that. Okay. And I guess that's it. Otherwise, we're moving forward on what we talked about last meeting about personnel evaluation, so please focus on that. We'll get from Ed, as soon as I get his self-evaluation, I'll pass that around to you, so you can use that for
The
information.
date you want the copy
Right.
at the 28th? Date?
Our next meeting is going to be the 1st, so
Okay.
I don't know, somewhere around that time, yeah. I may just send you a note about that, but not later
Okay.
than that, yeah.
Sure.
Something like that. Okay, anything else? If not, there's no PCFs, PRFs tonight, there's no licenses and permits. Francine, how about some warrants?
Okay, warrant W-25V for a minus $125. The check was returned, the amount was incorrect. They're going to reissue another check in its place for $112.36. Warrant 22-27 for $212,143.48 as a vendor payable. P payroll 22-28 for $282,971.76. A payroll deduction warrant, PD 22-28, $44,633.67. And a vendor payable warrant W 22-29 for $417,612.45.
All right, anybody have any questions on expenses? Yeah.
I do. On warrant 22-27, on page 4, could I just get clarification on why we're paying the Easthampton Fire Department? It looks like multiple charges of $300, and when I do the cross-reference to the expense account, it looks like we paid them 21 times. Do we know what that, is that $300 per
Per call,
per mutual aid call?
I think it is.
per intercept?
Yeah, for the number of
The
interceptions.
two to Easthampton Fire Department?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
$300 a piece.
That would be for ambulance calls.
yeah.
Okay.
I can confirm that.
Okay. And
Can I ask a question about 2229?
Yep.
On, what page is this, on the, page 4? I just have a question. It says there's a charge for a tax title, 144160, and it's a particular law office.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
I'm on warrant 2229 on page, in our packets, it's on page 4. And it says tax title, and then it says a law office.
Yeah.
I just was wondering about that. I mean, it's obviously not our contracted attorney, and I'm just wondering,
I think,
was that on town
Would
land?
that have been property that,
if I could, I think there's a property that's going to be coming before us. It's in land court, and that's the attorney representing us in land court to
Oh,
seize the
okay.
property over in the
Yeah.
ponds.
Thank you.
Over
Could
where?
be it, but I will check and let you know.
Ponds, maybe? Yeah.
Okay,
So property that maybe is behind on taxes, is that it, or not necessarily?
Well, yeah, if they're in tax title, we're in the process of foreclosing, taking.
Right.
But
Correct.
and where is that budgeted, in our budget?
yeah, I thought I saw a $3,000 line item.
Oh, really?
There
Tax
is,
title.
yeah, there is
Oh, under
a,
what line, do you know?
Treasury tax title.
Oh, okay.
On the
All right.
expense report.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
it's
thank
there.
you.
Yep, okay. Good, all right.
Okay.
Good. Thanks for those questions, all right. Okay, and then.
Time I'll bring the backup with me.
What's that?
and you know what?
I said,
I'm wondering if that got cut off, because Berenson and Bloom is our tax title attorney, and that says Behrens. So I'm wondering if just the rest of the name got cut off.
Oh, it could be because of
Oh,
the spacing in
okay.
the,
That's my original thought, but I will confirm.
yeah,
okay.
Okay.
that's probably it, yeah. All right, Francie, anything else? No?
No, nothing else.
Okay. Minutes to approve, October 5.
Make a motion,
Go ahead, John.
make a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th.
Okay, could I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Okay.
Pending items, Old Town Hall. Anything from
No,
Hill and Associates?
no.
Not yet. They're supposed to be getting us a scope of work for the initial repair work to be done.
Correct.
Nothing on the Charter Building, Fulmer Road.
Nope.
Clearwater Woodland.
Yes,
Yay.
we had a wonderful trip out there on Friday and got fresh air. We were out there for 2 hours. I was accompanied by Maureen Groden and Cindy Palmer, and had a GPS device with us. I will say we successfully found the fence.
And you didn't get lost, okay?
And we didn't get lost, we made it back out, but trying to actually identify the points of the fence that might be actually on our property was almost impossible
Yeah.
from that. So I do have another, shall we say, suggestion, recommendation, so that we don't have to expend money to have a survey company go back out there and actually identify the points of the fence that are on our property. And while you look at the map and it looks easy to do, between topography and, shall we say, vegetation, it's almost impossible to look down and say, okay, here's one point, and that must be the other point. So, and I have reached out to KP Law, so we could do this if the select board is amendable. We could send a letter to the Holyoke Beagle Club, and I would include a copy of that survey map again, and just basically say that survey was done, we've bought the property, your fence is on town property as per this survey. However, we are notifying you that at this of this information at this point in time. This does not shall we say, constitute permission for adverse possession, but the town will allow you to leave it there at this time. However, either upon sale or transfer of the property from you to another entity, the fence, the portions of the fence which are on town property would either have to be moved or removed.
Question.
Yes.
So under that possible solution, would there be somehow some notation made at the registry of deeds against their deed? So 50 years from now, when someone's doing a deed check, they find it, or no? Is it just a letter in a file?
It's just a letter, and I suppose the other way to go about it is, could make it, shall we say, expire in 5 years or have to be renewed in 5 years.
How much-
I know their membership is getting less and less. At what point in time they may want to think about, transferring that, or selling that property. And who knows, perhaps at that point in time, maybe the town would be, amendable to procuring it from them.
So would we be, this is going to get really nitpicky, could we be granting them an easement in gross? So granting them an easement, but it runs with the Beagle Club and not with the land. So we're saying they can have their fence there because it's them and we're allowing it, but if they sell the property, it's not running with the land, they're giving up that fence.
We could also do it under a license agreement.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, that sounds, I think we've invested enough. This has been on the books for over a year, and I think, at least this has been a great faith effort to get out there and get this looked at, and, it doesn't seem like there's an easy solution, and this sounds like a pretty good plan as long as, we don't lose,
Right.
they don't encroach on our property. That's, they don't, the adverse possession that you were
adverse
mentioning.
possession.
I think the unfortunate thing is that we had a map that had the compass points, we had a map that showed the fence, the old fence, our property line is a straight line. It was very difficult, like Ed said, to really ascertain where the fence was encroaching, but it encroaches by, according to the map, 50 feet, which is significant, I think.
Yeah.
Not that anybody's going to, be able to walk to the
sell
edge
it
of
to
the
them?
property because of the land terrain, but it just seems unfortunate that it's all mapped out, and yet there isn't a single marker on any tree or anything, or any pipe. I would feel more comfortable if we got a decision from KP Law, that would, because I don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy
Yeah.
in this land. So I don't know if that's something
Oh,
that...
they could,
I already reached out to them.
yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so they could draft up a letter of some sort for
Yeah.
us to look at?
They do a certified letter?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I just assume the answer is no, but we don't want them to just buy that 50 feet from us. Let them do the survey, buy the land, and be done with it.
No, there's a conservation
Yeah,
restriction on it and everything else, so I would say no.
Well, that would have been an easy way.
Not, the fencing is poor.
Yeah.
Even the newer fencing isn't great.
Yeah,
Yes.
So I think it's just an oversight. I think.
yeah, okay. So could I have a motion to deal with
I'll make a
this?
motion that we send a certified letter to the,
Drafted by KB Law?
Dr. McKibbe Law, to the Holyoke Beagle Club, acknowledging that their fence is over in our property and that they wouldn't necessarily be required to move it or do a survey or anything, and that there would just be an acknowledgement, and I don't remember if we agreed on an expiration date.
Well, I'll find out from KP Law what they recommend,
yeah,
whether
what they recommend.
they might recommend saying, okay, well, let's do it by basically, another method such as a license agreement or what have you. So that would clear all that up.
And Concom, you think is you okay with all this? I just worry, with the changing of people all the time in
Yeah.
town, that we just don't want to
Right.
lose sight of this.
No, we want to keep track of it.
Yeah, that's
But
why,
I- yeah.
perhaps a license agreement might be better then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that we will, I'll delegate to Ed the authority to approach KP Law and draft a letter that seems to make the sense that meets our needs for this property boundary issue. And
There
then
was a second, was there?
do that, yeah. Can we have a second to that?
Second.
All right. Any further comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Opposed, no.
No?
Nope.
All right.
Could we just, could you clarify what would be the difference in having a license agreement? What would that involve?
It would actually be agreement rather than a letter, so it would have the ability to have an expiration on it. The other thing of license agreements in Massachusetts is would be revocable at any time by us.
So you would end up, would you bring that back to us, Ed, in terms of what their recommendations are before it's actually sent out?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that was a 4-to-1 vote on that one. All right.
And we did meet some very nice people over out there.
Yeah,
Good, all right.
it's used, which is great.
Okay, I think we're toward the end. The Green Community Grant, any information there that we need to be working on? Are we working on gathering information for
I
this?
am working on gathering information, yes.
Okay. We don't have, I mean, we just, at some point, we have to show how much we have spent and saved, right, in terms of our energy savings against
Well,
this.
our goal is to implement 20% energy savings. And once we do that, we are entitled to apply for other DOER Green Community
Right.
Grant funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But weren't we approved for a 130-something thousand?
138,000, which we can spend, still need DOER approval for the projects we spend it on, but that, like I say, that doesn't, there's no requirements that we have reached 20% to be able to spend that or anything else.
But at some point, can we get a figure of how much of the 138 we've actually spent? Because
We haven't spent any of it yet.
Okay,
Yeah. The one project we did was actually a net zero to the town, which was at Norris School. So we did not need to spend any of that to make that one happen.
so it's not the actual expense, it's the cost savings, it's the difference, it's the cost savings in terms of whatever action we've taken.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, interesting, okay.
Yeah, you could have a proposal that would spend, the project itself might have a cost of it of $200,000, but you might have like rebates and cost savings in it of $150,000, so you'd be looking at spending actually a net of $50,000.
And then how do we realize the 138,000?
We apply to DOER to expend any of those funds on any of the projects that come forward that look like they're good cost savings to get us to the 20%.
And we do have a deadline, though. I mean, it was extended, right? But we do have
No,
it. Is
there's
there-
no deadline on that 138,000.
Isn't?
No.
Okay.
So the cost savings eventually can be applied toward another project up to the $138,000, is that?
Correct. You could have one project, 2 projects, 3 projects, 4 projects. The idea is you want to use that money towards very returnable, high cost savings so that you can get to your 20% requirement.
Well, just as a heads up, and I don't know that it'll ever fly, but one of the suggestions that came out of the Cost Efficiencies Committee was, could we look at the possibility of going to LED for our streetlights?
Right. That one is not a, shall we say, low-hanging, high-return
No, I know.
fruit. But
Because it requires
But
that.
that is the type of project
Yeah.
that we would not normally do because of the
Sure.
$40,000 buy-in to buy out all those streetlights, plus
Right.
we have to get into an agreement with someone to then maintain them.
Right.
So that is the idea of trying to use these DOER grants to do projects
Yeah.
like that. You're
Okay.
correct.
Good to know. Yep, okay. Any thoughts, comments? If not, we have a Select Board meeting February 1st and 15th, and I believe we might have an executive meeting coming up next week, is that right? I think, and that's it. So no executive session tonight, and could I have a meeting to adjourn, a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned at about 8:46?
47.
8:47, all right. Okay, John, we almost.